Cababan's vision blurred, and the last thing he saw was the true face of Jian Wushuang. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. Using the last shreds of consciousness in his mind, he muttered to Jian Wushuang. "So, brother who looks like this, huh? Better looking than me." Jian Wushuang reached out, intending to transfer the power of life to him, but found it was too late. His eyes began to dim. The blue flames of starry sky power surged continuously. His divine body started to loosen, constantly trembling. Jian Wushuang lowered his head, gritting his teeth as he growled deep in his throat. "You shouldn't have come back." He couldn't die. He still had the one-thought universe, capable of unleashing the Three-Quakes shuttle, capable of escaping. But Cababan didn't know. He thought Jian Wushuang was in dire straits. Sang who rushed over, didn't change his mind because of Cababan's fall, still preparing to attack Jian Wushuang. Seeing the giant fish head, Xianxia felt somewhat uncomfortable. He operated the battle formation to descend from the sky, fiercely crushing the fish head with the formation's knee. The blood inside the fish head splashed all over Jian Wushuang's face. Jian Wushuang's pupils contracted, a wave of rage erupting from the depths of his heart. At this moment, he completely erupted. His divine power surged along with his origin source. The blue aura on his body soared into the sky. Ah! Jian Wushuang clenched his fists, and with a burst of power, directly repelled Sangmo and Xianxia in front of him. Buzz! At this moment, he underwent a qualitative change. The blue aura on his body condensed into substance. His divine power overflowed, merging with the power of the starry sky. This was the super-eternal ancient transformation. His divine power and origin directly surged 50 times. His divine power, originally at a constant level of 400,000, increased by 50 times in combat power. Now it was 800,000 divine power, equivalent to doubling his divine power. And his origin source also doubled. An already complete universe suddenly overlapped with two universes. He now wielded the Starry Sky Chronicles with more power than ever before. Killing those at the fifth tribulation realm seemed almost effortless for him. Is this the super-eternal ancient transformation? Jian Wushuang, deep within his palm, gathered an aura, feeling incredulous. He grew stronger, yet there was no joy in it. Instead, anger surged through his entire being. Sangmo noticed a change in Jian Wushuang's aura and thought it was just a momentary burst. He lunged forward, jaws wide open, aiming to swallow Jian Wushuang whole. The gaping maw headed straight for Jian Wushuang. Without even turning his head, Jian Wushuang simply raised his hand and flung Sangmo out 100 miles away, crashing against the barrier of the core of that sanctuary. Sangmo, rubbing his sore jaw, could hardly believe Jian Wushuang's strength. The sensation he felt when he had just made contact with Jian Wushuang, he had experienced it before. But that time it was facing Tmu King at the sixth tribulation realm. Xianxia and the others who witnessed this scene from afar were all dumbfounded. "How is this possible?" Xianxia exclaimed. The Jian Lian demoness had no idea who Jian Wushuang was, as she had been in seclusion preparing for the sacred assembly and was ignorant of such matters. She couldn't care less about Jian Wushuang. But Xianxia knew that Jian Wushuang was merely an emperor. Previously, reaching the threshold of the fifth tribulation realm was thought to be the limit. Yet now, with just a single blow, Sangmo was gravely injured. He couldn't even achieve that. The Mafu King and Whale Shark revealed expressions of joy, hastily communicating with Sangmo, advising him not to provoke Jian Wushuang again, as they might end up joining forces with him later. But they didn't know that Jian Wushuang, as he was now, didn't need any allies. He could take them all down single-handedly. Those on the warship were also astonished by Jian Wushuang's outburst. Shizhou was gaping, unsure of what to say at this moment. Deep down, he felt the foolishness of the ancestors, and their narrow-mindedness. Xianxia was now somewhat panicked, exclaiming, "How can you be so powerful? Because standing before you is the one and only Super Jian Wushuang." Jian Wushuang's voice barely faded as he disappeared before Xianxia's eyes with a swift movement. Shi Tian's eyes and psychic power both tried to capture Jian Wushuang's figure, only to find that Jian Wushuang had truly vanished before him. Fool! I'm above your head. Jian Wushuang had already collected the Wanjie sword, considering it unworthy of such rubbish. With the super-eternal ancient transformation, even the most basic power amounted to 800,000 divine power. Below the sixth tribulation realm, there were hardly any opponents. With arms crossed over his chest, he disdainfully stared down at the opponent. Shi Tian quickly looked up, wanting to take the initiative. However, Jian Wushuang suddenly descended, forcefully stomping on the battle formation operated by Shi Tian. He directly stomped Shi Tian into the ground, then spat out and taunted, "Where's your high and mighty demeanor? And what about your strength?" Shi Tian struggled to free himself from Jian Wushuang's foot, but just as he managed to get up from the ground, Jian Wushuang raised his leg and delivered a knee kick, sending Shi Tian flying hundreds of miles away, just like Sangmo. Both crashed into the barrier. However, Sangmo and the others stayed aside, not daring to step forward again. Shi Tian, on the other hand, was extremely resentful and roared, "Jian Wushuang, you damn son-in-law, I'll make you pay with your life." Shi Tian went crazy, swinging his war hammer and charging. Jian Wushuang merely used a finger to block the once unbeatable war hammer. Under the war hammer he had suffered greatly, and this war hammer even killed Cababan. Shi Tian couldn't believe that his war hammer couldn't even budge Jian Wushuang. He raised it again and fiercely smashed it towards Jian Wushuang. Repeatedly, he struck tens of thousands of times. Yet Jian Wushuang blocked them all with just one finger. At the final strike, Jian Wushuang directly grabbed the war hammer with his hand. This war hammer was a treasure of the fourth tribulation realm, extremely tough. Jian Wushuang gripped the war hammer, making it impossible for Shi Tian to pull it out. Then he angrily shouted, "Ah!" The war hammer in his hand began to crack. "Shatter for me!" Once again he exerted force, and he crushed the fourth tribulation realm level war hammer. This time Shi Tian was completely panicked. Even the treasured weapon was crushed by Jian Wushuang. His operated battle formation became somewhat unstable. He staggered back 2 steps, pointing at Jian Wushuang and said, "You how?" He was so scared that he even spoke. Jian Wushuang lunged forward, raising his hand to punch directly at the chest of the battle formation. The battle formation, with 700,000 divine powers, instantly collapsed. As the battle formation disintegrated, the 104th Tribulation Realm experts, including Shi Tian, all spat blood and fell to the ground. They were completely powerless. Jian Wushuang walked slowly forward, stepping on Shi Tian's cheek with one foot, looking down at him, mocking, "Weren't you quite powerful just now? What happened now?" Spitting towards his face, Jian Wushuang wiped his mouth with disdain. "You're just trash." After saying that, he was ready to deal with Shi Tian. Consider it avenging Cababan. And all those in the battle formation would have to die. On the other side, Shi San and the others. Seeing that things had developed beyond control, Shi San could no longer stand by. His figure flashed, and he appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. "I didn't expect it, Jian Wushuang. You truly are unparalleled. It seems everything earlier was just a misunderstanding." Shi San stepped forward as the peacemaker. Seeing their ancestor arrive, Shi Tian quickly cried for help. "Ancestor, save me." Facing death, the fear coursing through him made him tremble. Shi San's appearance was his lifeline, something he naturally clung to. To Shi Tian, Shi San was a lifeline, but to Jian Wushuang he was nothing. Even if the emperor himself came today, Jian Wushuang would still kill Shi Tian. Hearing Shi San's words, he nearly laughed, his gaze icy as he stared at him, mocking. "Have your eyesight gotten so bad that you can't even recognize your own grandfather?" He showed no mercy. It was clear to him that the old man had recognized him earlier, yet still allowed Shi Tian to attack, likely under orders. And now he was pretending to be a good person? He'd deal with him later. Shi San, however, didn't get angry at this. Meanwhile, the Jing Lian demoness flew over. Shi Tian was the direct descendant of her foster father, so naturally, He had to protect him. San, why waste words with him? He dared to provoke my Sure kingdom. Just kill him. Jing Lian Demoness, though not of royal blood, had the arrogance of royalty. Might makes right, because the Sure kingdom was the strongest. Such thinking was most advantageous to them. San frowned at her words, silently cursing her for not seeing the situation clearly. There were still 3 savage beasts on the field. Once they started, Jian Wushuang would team up with the other side. Then they would be in trouble. At that point, they wouldn't even be able to complete their special mission, let alone save their lives. Upon arriving at this place, they had to assess the benefits carefully. Harnessing the power of life was the top priority. Initially, killing Jian Wushuang, a seemingly insignificant figure, wouldn't provoke the Yu Kingdom. However, this insignificant figure unexpectedly unleashed the power of a significant figure. That changed everything. Wushuang Taoist, please don't take offense. Jing Lian has always been like this. After saying this, he turned towards the direction of the warship and waved, indicating for Shizhou to bring Jinshin over. Jian Wushuang understood his meaning. Before Shizhou could bring Jinshin, he exerted force under his feet, crushing Shitian's head into a pulp, vanishing along with his origin source. Jing Lian's eyes revealed a murderous intent, seemingly ready to strike directly. But at this moment, the Whale Shark King and the Mafu King flew over, pretending to be confused. What's this? Bullying Weilong Mountain because there's no one around. For a moment, both sides were at a standstill. However, San had an absolute bargaining chip. But he found Shizhou unexpectedly not listening to him. Originally, according to his plan, even if Shitian died, it wouldn't matter. Consider it venting for Jian Wushuang. Then let Shizhou bring Jinshin over, express remorse, and appeal emotionally, just to gloss over this matter. But now, at this moment, Shizhou was ignoring him outright. On the warship, Jinshin remained silent. Shizhou refused to look at any of the patriarchs or listen to their words. At this moment, he couldn't use Jinsheng to threaten Jian Wushuang, and he knew it. He didn't believe that Patriarch San would kill him over this matter. His grandfather was Xiu. Although not as high in seniority as Patriarch San, his strength was sufficient. Among the Shi clan's ranks, no one dared to threaten him. This time, he would definitely protect Jinshin. This was the opportunity Jian Wushuang had given him. Naturally, he had to seize it. Jinshin had also told him that Jian Wushuang's marriage into the family was because of a slot in the sacred assembly, and she would leave on her own accord later. The two would still be together. He wouldn't betray the vows they made at the Sea of Vows over such trivial matters. But his actions made San feel like a clown, his face flushed with urgency. Jian Wushuang, you must think this through. You are the son-in-law of the Yu Kingdom. You are of the human race. How dare you travel with savage beasts? San, frustrated, could only resort to threatening Jian Wushuang with his lineage. But Jian Wushuang was no longer threatened by such things. He looked around at the powerful members of the Shi Kingdom lying on the ground. When I was attacked by human cultivators, no one stood up for me. Instead, a savage beast rushed in to help me. He raised the arm of the candle dragon, palm facing upward, and said coldly, "To me, you are enemies, and he is my friend. If enemies kill my friend, I will seek revenge." Ha! The claws of the candle dragon burst forth with countless streams of light soaring into the sky, randomly dispersing in the air and crashing to the ground. San also became furious and attempted to stop Jian Wushuang with Jing Lian. But they felt attacks from above. They could only retreat and dodge. But the fourth tribulation experts lying on the ground couldn't escape. They turned into dust one by one. Jian Wushuang lowered his arm, looked up at the sky, and silently said, "Rest in peace," a mourning sentence. The anger inside him dissipated. At this moment, he also felt an unprecedented sense of oppression. That was because his strength couldn't support it. Only the Universe Master could withstand the super-eternal ancient transformation. His current strength was still too weak, not enough to bear it. In his current state, He could only hold out for the time it takes an incense stick to burn before the runs out of breath. The battle had to be resolved quickly. The Shurgwa had lost 100 elites in this battle and would surely not let him off. Even if he managed to escape, they would hunt him down. But he wouldn't care about that then. Anyway, he would be hunted down this time. One more or one less wouldn't matter. It didn't matter anymore. Shursan's anger surged, but reason overcame his rage. He couldn't act. If he did, Jian Wushuang and the savage beast would only escape. Not only would the mission be in vain, but he would also lose the power of life. But now, there were no factors left to break the deadlock. Even Jing Lian Demoness was shocked by Jian Wushuang's strength, which surpassed her own complete fifth tribulation realm. With a divine power of 800,000, he already possessed the battle power of a scattered sixth tribulation. Despite continuously trying to win over Jian Wushuang, both Whale Shark King and the Mafu King were deeply wary of his strength. At this moment, neither dared to take the initiative. Jian Wushuang was the only one who could break the stalemate. Whoever he chose to assist would win. However, Jian Wushuang never intended to help either side. If time wasn't limited, he would have wanted to kill them all. The desire to kill was still very strong within him. Fortunately, his anger subsided, otherwise he might have actually done it. The debt of revenge had been repaid. He had no need for such meaningless battles anymore. Now he had only one goal. That was to break through the barrier surrounding the core of the sanctuary. To see if the mysterious person inside was Wu Li. That would put his mind at ease. If not, he would leave. If it was, he would take Wu Li with him. Either way, he didn't want to stay in this place any longer. Whoosh! Just when everyone was waiting for him to make a move, Jian Wushuang voluntarily left the battlefield and headed straight for the barrier. Upon realizing Jian Wushuang's target, Whale Shark King roared in anger, "How dare you!" His secrets were still hidden there. If Jian Wushuang were to break through, it would be over. At this moment, he couldn't care less, his figure trembling. The entire sanctuary began to tremble. A rumble. A huge totem appeared on the ground. Shursan and Jing Lian were startled, quickly retreating. It was already suspicious that a fourth tribulation realm could unleash 700,000 divine powers. Sure enough, there was a hidden move. Even Mafu King hadn't expected Whale Shark to be this powerful. The moment the totem appeared, Whale Shark's divine power had reached 750,000. Boom! The ground began to crack. Whale Shark transformed into its true form, leaping into the ground like a whale diving into water, causing splashes. Mafu King was stunned. Whale Shark actually entered the ground, and they couldn't even sense its presence anymore. But the totem on the ground kept rotating. Then he felt a terrifying aura rising from the ground beneath his feet and quickly retreated. Boom! After a loud noise, the gigantic whale shark burst out from the ground. Then it transformed back into human form again. But this time Whale Shark's divine power had directly reached 800,000. Trembling, Mafu King said, "Fourth Tribulation Realm. You've already reached the fourth Tribulation Realm." He couldn't believe it. Whale Shark King had been suppressing his own strength all along. Whale Shark's actions were conspicuous, catching the attention of Jian Wushuang. He hadn't expected Whale Shark King to conceal himself so deeply. With originally 800,000 divine power, he still insisted on dragging them to enhance that treasure. Moreover, rumors had always circulated about his great ambition on Weilong Mountain. Now it seemed that everything before had been a disguise. It was a kind of feigned weakness. This display of weakness was far more cunning than when he revealed his fourth tribulation realm while acting subdued. He feared that once he exposed himself as a fifth tribulation's realm cultivator, the TMU king would kill him. And now he had just revealed it. It was all because he needed to break through this barrier. Inside, there probably hid enormous secrets. The more so, the more he wanted to go in and take a look. After the Whale Shark King displayed his full power, he sneered coldly, "None of you will leave today, all of you shall die." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand and summoned that treasure which could unleash power to the extreme. Pointing downwards, he instantly cast his spell. Mafu King felt despair. He knew well that this thing possessed the power of 1,000,000 gods. At such close range, even if it didn't hit him directly, he would be shaken to death. Feeling a fatal crisis, San grabbed Jinglian, the Yao girl, and fled. Even the people on the warship didn't care anymore. Jian Wushuang hurriedly shouted, "Take her away quickly!" His speed was too slow now. He could only inform Shizhou to take Jinshin and flee. As for himself, he was not afraid at all. The candle dragon wings enveloped his whole body. Unfortunately, he had already reached the state of overload when he used the super-eternal ancient transformation, and his divine power was no longer at its peak but in an overloaded state. Even with his armor, he couldn't use the power of the beast god anymore. Using it again would be out of the question. 800,000, doubling the power of the beast god, would bring him to the threshold of the 7th tribulation realm. That would be too terrifying. However, facing a strike of 1,000,000 divine powers now, he wasn't in much danger. With his divine power and the condensation of his origin source, plus the enhancement of his life force, he was more than capable of dealing with it. And he still had the 3-quake universe to completely avoid the core attack. It's just that the fluctuations of the attack couldn't harm him. But others were miserable. Even someone like San, a top-tier 5th tribulation's realm expert, would find it hard to withstand. Boom! The treasure in the hands of the whale shark king began to erupt. On the warship, Shizhou had long since pulled Jinshin away and escaped, although the warship was very close to the entrance of the cave. But the powerful force erupted too quickly. It was almost impossible for the two of them to escape completely. Even though Shizhou had used the life-saving treasure his grandfather had given him, his speed was comparable to the peak of the 4th tribulation's realm, but it was still powerless. "Channer, you must stay alive." Shizhou gazed at Jinshin tenderly, then pushed all the power within him into Jinshin. Jinshin couldn't accept it and shouted, "No!" The Empress had also given her a treasure to escape, but it proved useless along the way as Jian Wushuang had protected her well. However, fate can be unpredictable. Outside the Blessed Land, she was attacked by Sangmo. Using the treasure her mother had given her, she narrowly escaped death. Coincidentally, she encountered the Shi Kingdom's team. They saved her life. At the same time, she saw Shizhou again. Both were filled with countless joys. Moreover, Jian Wushuang had told her that after this sacred assembly, he would leave Yu Kingdom and never return. If her mother could become the Holy Maiden, it would be when she ascended to the throne. Then she could openly be with Shizhou. Never did she expect that just when everything seemed to be going well, there would be such a sudden separation. It was truly difficult for her to accept. That force enveloped her, accompanied by endless power, and threw her out of the Blessed Land. While Shizhou, forever parted from her, stood at the edge of the Blessed Land's entrance. In the sea of fire, half of his body turned into bones, while the other half, staring in the direction of Jian Wushuang, self-mockingly said, "Jian Wushuang, in the end, I still have to rely on you." Crash! In an instant, the other half of his body also turned into bones, ultimately crumbling into powder. Jian Wushuang seemed to hear a voice of reliance, but he was completely focused on avoiding the core attack. He didn't expect the whale shark king to be so crazy, swaying left and right, insisting on staring at him. Fortunately, he didn't go to save Jinshin, or else his guilt would be even greater. "Die!" The whale shark king laughed wildly. This time, Mofo King was truly dead. San and the Jing Lian demoness desperately escaped. At the entrance, they saw Jinshin with vacant eyes. "Where's Shizhou?" San, upon seeing Jinshin, thought of Shizhou. In his view, the most likely to escape was Shizhou, because Shizhou had the life-saving treasure given by Shizhou. After scanning around and not finding Shizhou, he looked at Jinshin's eyes again. San understood. What a disaster! He sighed. The pride of the Shi Kingdom's generation was gone. Even many 4th Tribulation Universe Masters were lost. They came in good shape. Hundreds of strong individuals. Now only he and Jing Lian were left alive. However, he didn't give up. Even if he couldn't help Jing Lian become a candidate for the Holy Maiden, he still needed to obtain the power of life inside. Only by obtaining that power of life could he return to the royal family, this time without punishment. After all the people he brought had perished, something that had never happened in so many generations. If the team had been annihilated, it would have been understandable. But not the Sure Kingdom. Although their team wasn't the strongest, it had the most people. This annihilation hurt the Sure Kingdom deeply. Jing Lian was also furious. Her candidate for Holy Maiden was gone. With so many strong individuals lost this time, when she returned to Yu Kingdom, she wouldn't receive any good treatment. All her previous efforts were wasted. Jing Lian was truly furious, turning to Xianxia and saying fiercely, "It's all because of you. This jinx. Why don't you just die? You're the one who should die." Jing Lian Demoness, unable to contain her anger, directed all her fury at Xianxia. Xianxia stood still, her eyes flickering. Her heart had died within her. All that remained now was an empty shell. "You're right." She gave a brief smile to Jing Lian and then flew into the entrance of the blessed land, leaping into the sea of fire. San wanted to stop her, but couldn't make it in time. All he could do was cover his face and say, Why bother?" The flames inside the blessed land burned for a full stick of incense before finally disappearing completely. Whale Shark King casually threw away the shattered treasures in his hand. Meanwhile, the barrier at the core of the blessed land had already begun to crack. This made his eyes shimmer. He flew over. But in the next moment, he was kicked into the ground by Jian Wushuang, who descended from the sky. Jian Wushuang dared not linger because he could no longer sustain the super-ancient transformation. Seizing the last breath of time, he flashed his figure, directly re-establishing the barrier. Using his last breath, he directly broke through a hole in the cracked barrier. The hole was small and weak, and his figure directly transformed into a wisp of mist, entering the barrier at the last moment. Whale Shark King, who had risen to his feet, saw Jian Wushuang go in and followed suit. However, he crashed into the barrier and couldn't get in at all. How is this possible? He couldn't understand. If Jian Wushuang could get in, why couldn't he? Furious, he continuously bombarded the barrier. Whenever a small round hole appeared in the barrier, his attempt to enter was thwarted. He simply couldn't get in. But he watched Jian Wushuang charge in. He didn't know that the barrier was actually alive. More precisely, it was manipulated by someone. Whoever the person inside wanted to let in could enter. Conversely, no one could break through. Just now, with 1,000,000 divine powers, only some cracks appeared in the barrier. Even TMU Wang at the 6th Tribulation Realm couldn't break it. And TMU King did come this time. San entered in front of Jing Lian, and TMU King followed suit. "Haha! It seems I missed a good show." TMU King grinned at everyone. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. No matter how deeply Whale Shark King hid, he still lost completely this time. San and Jing Lian's faces changed drastically. The king of the Roman River. The two of them were somewhat desperate this time. All the misfortunes of the Sure Kingdom this time had fallen upon them. A powerful expert of the 6th Tribulation's realm appeared. Both of them knew it was over, just as they were preparing to escape. Whale Shark King, however, transmitted a message, "Cooperate." A simple word gave them hope once again. Escape was definitely impossible. King TMU stood at the exit. There was no way to flee. But when he heard that the Whale Shark King wanted to cooperate. So, the three of them joining forces had a chance against a 6th Tribulation realm expert. And this chance was significant. The cunning Whale Shark King didn't waste time trying to reconcile with TMU King, because he knew best that reconciliation between them was impossible. Once he reached the 5th Tribulation realm, TMU would kill him. He could only cooperate with human cultivators and figure out another plan. For individuals, 2 factions. Battle. Commence. The battles within the sanctuary ensued one after another. While within the sanctuary's core barrier, there was an unusual calm. Upon Jian Wushuang's entry, the state of extreme ancient transformation vanished. His body relaxed, nearly stumbling. Fortunately, someone caught him. Looking up, he found himself supported by a tray ant covered in green leaves. "Who are you?" Jian Wushuang was greatly surprised. Sensing the immense life force emanating from the tray ant, he understood. A warmth enveloped him. It was the Trent's gift of life force. "Wu Li is in seclusion. You shall wait here with me until he returns." After helping Jian Wushuang regain his strength, the tray ant led him towards a cave ahead. The outer gate of the cave was a cliff. On the edge of the cliff stood a pavilion caught in the wind. Jian Wushuang followed the tray ant into the pavilion. Yet he couldn't shake off his puzzlement. Glancing around, he noticed the spirits of grass and trees scattered around the walls outside the cave. Seeing this, he was startled. He thought he had returned to Qishan Temple. "Do you recognize them?" The tray ant handed Jian Wushuang a cup of tea and casually asked. Jian Wushuang nodded, then picked up the teacup. The tea leaves floating on top looked remarkably similar to the tray ant. Despite several attempts, he couldn't bring himself to take a sip. So he spoke. "I've seen them before." He couldn't sense the Trent's strength. Thus, he lowered his status and asked again, "Senior, who are you?" Since the other party knew Wu Li, it was highly likely that they were one of Wu Li's hidden powers. This tactic of hosting powerful beings within oneself was something Jian Wushuang had encountered several times. The most recent one was by Jun Wang residing within him. And now there was another within him. But this one claimed to be a god. Jian Wushuang simply ignored them, because it was too uninteresting. Seeing Wu Li possess such unique powers, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but feel envious of the guidance it provided from deep within. It seems the secret of entering Wanlu was brought up by this senior. So he didn't need to introduce himself. The other party might be even more familiar with him than Wu Li. "I am just a nobody. Even if I say my name, you wouldn't recognize it. How about you tell me about yourself? You seem to be knowledgeable about the spirits of grass and wood. Have you perhaps entered the divine tree of Wanlu?" The tray ant directly spoke straightforwardly. Although Jian Wushuang was somewhat surprised by the directness of the other party, he also liked this approach. He calmly said the most impolite words. This was the best way. He didn't feel any threat from the other party. So he honestly replied, "I have never been to Wanlu, but I have entered a certain secret realm. This secret realm is very mysterious. It is not in ancient moon spacetime but in the distant downstream of the river of time. In that secret realm, there is a forest of eternal secrets, and there are spirits of grass and wood inside. However, I did not obtain them. I only encountered them once in an auction." He still remembered that time, the auction, and it was said that the spirit of plants and trees was bought by Hu Qing and ended up in the hands of Jiangshang. And Jiangshang later exploded in strength, surpassing Long Yi at one point. His body also contained acquired life force. So he had a deep impression of the spirit of grass and wood. The downstream of the river of time. The tray ant sipped his tea delicately and said calmly, "That makes sense. Wanlu was brought up from the lower reaches of the river of time. Passing through the downstream, perhaps there are some remnants. Actually, to be precise, it's not the lower reaches. It's the middle reaches. The forest of eternal secrets was originally in the Moro spacetime." Hearing the Trent's words, Jian Wushuang thought of Mieshang again. If the forest of myriad treasures is related to Wanlu, then Mieshang must know. He just didn't understand why Mieshang insisted on targeting him. Wanlu also possessed life force, and it was even stronger than him. It's also innate life force. Wouldn't it be better to devour Wanlu? He suddenly remembered something. When he first entered ancient moon spacetime, he was intercepted by a celestial maiden. It must be the celestial maiden from ancient moon spacetime. Mieshang couldn't enter, so he targeted him. The celestial maiden is at the 9th tribulation realm. Even if Mieshang came from the starry sky at his peak, he probably wouldn't be much different from the celestial maiden. Moreover, Wanlu himself is powerful enough. Even the universe master at the 8th tribulation realm couldn't enter. If Mieshang came, he might not be able to defeat Wanlu. Not to mention the current Mieshang, let alone Jiangshang. The other party was calculated by Mieshang. There may be a plan against Wanlu. as a backup plan. With this in mind, Jian Wushuang spoke up, "Senior, can the spirit of plants and trees replace the origin source of cultivators and transform into the origin source of life?" He wanted to verify this matter. Xianxia's origin source spirit is the spirit of grass and wood are. How is that possible? The Treant laughed and shook his head upon hearing his words. But just as he spoke, he thought of someone and said, "In ancient moon spacetime there was indeed someone who did it, but that person has already fallen and become a god. Mortals cannot achieve it." Falling and becoming a god? Jian Wushuang suddenly felt like the other person had drunk too much tea. How could one say such a thing? But he still guessed, "Is it that celestial maiden?" "Yes." The tree person nodded. "Other than her, no one else can do it?" The tree person firmly shook his head. "No one else can do it, that's what I said." "Who are you?" Jian Wushuang didn't say this sentence out loud. He asked again, "Then if someone really did it, why?" He was sure that Xianxia had definitely reached that point. Could it be that Xianxia is the celestial maiden? With this thought, he suddenly stood up. There is really such a possibility. Xianxia might really be the reincarnation of the celestial maiden, or a manifestation. He had thought for a long time before entering ancient moon spacetime. In such a powerful spacetime, how could a mere spirit open a spacetime tunnel? If the tunnel were so easy to open, ancient moon spacetime would have unified the middle and lower realms long ago. And Fan Tianfeng wouldn't have to fly back with people all the way. Wouldn't it be easier for the flame god to open a spacetime tunnel to Qishan Temple? Why bother? Even if you don't know the location of Qishan Temple, you can open a downstream location first, saving a lot of time. At first, he thought it was Jinling using the temporal treasure. But later, he discovered that the temporal treasure was not that simple. Jinling, that old man, he knew nothing about spacetime. He's just a wandering spirit. Inherited some Qishan Temple obsession and memories. How could he possibly activate the temporal treasure to open a spacetime tunnel? There must be the guidance of the celestial maiden among them. After they entered the ancient moon spacetime, the heavenly woman, in order to prevent Miashang from sneaking in, checked each of them one by one. Then they were all sent into some big families. At first, he entered the Wu family. Actually, for an emperor to enter a family of Tribulation Realm, it's already a big opportunity. It's just that this emperor is a bit extraordinary. As for being so unlucky after reincarnation, it's probably also the intention of the celestial maiden, who made him offend Xianxia. While Fan Tianfeng's reincarnation is perfect, under the command of the strongest in the ancient Wood continent. Not everyone has this kind of luck. Hu Qing entered the ancient moon ruins. It's also the intention of the celestial maiden. And if Hu Qing doesn't let him go to the ancient moon ruins, it's probably because the celestial maiden is also there. I bet the others are doing well now. This time, he finally figured it out completely. But what followed was another big dilemma. If Xianxia is indeed the celestial maiden, then what does she seek? She wouldn't be after Jinling, that old man, would she? Even if the Qishan Temple has a couple of temporal treasures, they wouldn't allow a powerful figure of the Ninth Tribulation's realm to come and reincarnate. There must be reasons behind this that he doesn't know. Perhaps it's related to Mieshang. Thinking of this, he completely collapsed. The treeman poured tea thoughtfully and asked, "Do you think any of the celestial maidens have fallen?" Jian Wushuang was momentarily taken aback by the question. Frowning, he didn't know how to respond. Perhaps one had fallen. Or perhaps none had. Maybe they were just living in another form. If the Qishan Temple could arrange things, so could the celestial maiden. Everything is subject to fate. Some things need not be taken seriously, the Trey Ant said calmly. His calm demeanor made Jian Wushuang suspect that this guy might also be a god. Weiss was calm towards him. No matter what tricks he displayed, no matter how stunning, even if he used the treasures of spacetime, Weiss still looked at him calmly. But there was one thing. The Trent's aura was not completely undetectable like Weiss. There was still some gap. Even if he wasn't a god, the other party was definitely a strong one above the Seventh Tribulation realm. Just surviving in a different guise for now. He didn't directly inquire about the other's identity, as that would be too impolite. Since he didn't speak, There was no need to ask. They would talk when Wooly came out. The two waited quietly for Wooly to come out of seclusion. This wait lasted a day. Anyway, Jian Wushuang wasn't in a hurry. It was a good time to restore his strength. Wooly had been here for about 100 years already. It shouldn't take much longer. But after Wooly emerged from seclusion, how strong would he be? It wasn't out of fear, but because there might be some big secret in this cave. They were eager to get in. Those outside still didn't know that the peaches had been plucked. Jian Wushuang didn't mind. This time, he was fortunate because his anger allowed him to forcefully unleash the super-eternal ancient transformation, boosting his normal combat power by 50 times. And it wasn't even perfected yet. If it were the complete super-ancient transformation, it would definitely be even stronger than it is now. However, he couldn't dare to ask for more now. The current super-eternal ancient transformation was already sufficient. With 800,000 divine power and the limit of the origin source universe, whether using divine power or the origin source, it was enough to suppress any fifth tribulation realm. He could even contend against a sixth tribulation realm expert. Now, in the outside world, there happened to be a sixth tribulation realm. Tamu King. Facing 3 opponents, he suppressed them and beat down the 3 fifth tribulation experts. These 3 fifth tribulation realm opponents were extraordinary. The strongest among them, Whale Shark King, revealed his strongest strength, which could already rival Jian Wushuang when he unleashed the super-eternal ancient transformation. Jingle Lan Demoness also possessed over 750,000 divine power. Shi San wasn't much weaker. But even with these 3 strong fifth tribulation realm experts, facing Tmu King, they still didn't have much ability to fight back. At the peak, Tmu King had 900,000 divine power. He possessed the top combat power among 6 tribulation realms. However, this battle had little to do with Jian Wushuang anymore. He had already prepared to wait here. Wu Li would not emerge from seclusion so quickly. It might take hundreds of years. By that time, the outcome would have been decided in the outside world. Jian Wushuang took the opportunity to begin studying how to use the super-eternal ancient transformation. He soared in anger, instantly ascending. But now, when he calmed down, he couldn't transform anymore. No matter what he did, he couldn't unleash the super-eternal ancient transformation again. This gave him a massive headache. Without the super-eternal ancient transformation, he couldn't handle even the most ordinary fifth tribulation's realm experts. After pondering for a long time, he finally figured it out. The reason he couldn't unleash it was because he was no longer the universe master. He had known this for a long time. He just wasn't clear about the reason behind it. Now, after trying it once, he completely understood his current situation. As the emperor, he was like a fruit fallen from a tree. And the master of the universe was like a fruit growing on the tree. The latter had roots. Using the super-eternal ancient transformation relied on the foundation of the origin source universe. The former, however, had no such support. After understanding the reason, he began to look for a solution. In the end, he managed to figure it out. As long as he gathered qi for the time of an incense stick before each super-eternal ancient transformation, using qi as the core, transforming into the universe, then performing the super-eternal ancient transformation, it would succeed in one go. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang began to continuously attempt it within the origin source universe. First, he performed the ancient transformation. Then he gathered qi. When the qi reached its peak, his eyes changed, and he angrily shouted, "Super-eternal ancient transformation! Ah!" He clenched his fists, and a burst of qi erupted from his body. The aura on his body instantly began to change. Buzz. After a buzzing sound, he transformed into the super-eternal ancient transformation once again. This time, he finally had time to carefully feel this power, continuously throwing punches, feeling the divine power surging within his body. 800,000 divine power. Each punch was enough to kill a fourth tribulation's realm strongman. This was a qualitative change in strength. His divine power had increased 50 times more than usual. After becoming familiar with his divine power, he began to sense the origin source within himself. The power of the starry sky had also increased 50-fold. Now, his Starry Sky Chronicles, whether it was the first sword move life or the second sword move death, could slay experts of the fifth tribulation's realm and even contend with those of the sixth tribulation realm. However, the pressure was overwhelming. He could only endure for the time it took an incense stick to burn. The first time he unleashed it was unique. Only then could he withstand it for so long. Now, it seemed that the time spent gathering energy for an incense stick's duration resulted in the pinnacle of power for an incense stick's worth. Still, having something was better than nothing. Even when he reached the level of Universe Master, it wouldn't be effortless to wield. Just because he hadn't fully mastered it now didn't mean he couldn't in the future. The Eternal Ancient Transformation and the Starry Sky Chronicles were the pinnacle secrets he had created based on the power of the Starry Sky. It was also the strongest secret technique of his lifetime, albeit still in its early stages. There would be continuous improvements in the future. The Super Eternal Ancient Transformation was like the Starry Sky Chronicles. The Starry Sky Chronicles comprised 9 sword moves. Currently, he had created 5 sword mops and mastered 2. Life and Death. The third sword move was Reincarnation. The fourth sword move was Space-Time. And the fifth sword move was Space-Time Reincarnation. According to his calculations, he needed to reach the level of fifth tribulation's realm, achieve the perfection of the universe, witness the birth of life, and see life reach death before he could comprehend the Reincarnation sword. Just the Reincarnation sword alone was so troublesome. Not to mention the combination of the power of life and death into the cycle of reincarnation, which would be even more difficult than it is now. As for the subsequent sword move, Spacetime, it was much simpler. Just like life and death, at the same level he could wield these 2 swords. But for the subsequent Spacetime Reincarnation sword, he would need to reach the level of 7th Tribulation's realm, or even 8th Tribulation's realm, before he could unleash it. This was his clear recognition of the 5 swords moves. Following them was the 6th sword move. He only sensed a glimpse of its future power, could barely fathom it. All he knew was if he could unleash the 6th sword move, he could challenge the 3 ancient beings among the 9 great spacetimes. That's why it was called a match for the ancient. As for the subsequent 7, 8, and 9, he didn't even have the qualification to look at these 3 sword moves. Forget about reaching the realm of Universe Master, or striving for Super Eternal Ancient Transformation, which seemed more promising. Eternal Ancient Transformation, Super Eternal Ancient Transformation. Both were ways to rapidly enhance one's strength in normal times. This made his demands on himself in normal state even stricter. The stronger the normal state, the stronger he became after performing the Super Eternal Ancient Transformation. It's just that his divine power now couldn't be raised anymore. Otherwise, he'd end up becoming obese from overeating. The bones of Dong Jun were still within him. By the time he reached the realm of Universe Master, underwent 5 tribulations at once, and directly became a Universe Master of the 5th tribulation. Then he would devour the entire skeleton of Dong Jun. His divine power in the normal state would surpass 1,000,000. By then, not to mention the Super Eternal Ancient Transformation. Even with the power of the Beast God, he could probably contend with someone in the 7th tribulation realm. It's just that he still couldn't see through the bones of Dong Jun, nor did he know how much it could enhance. Anyway, 1,000,000 was the baseline. He was unsure of the upper limit, nor did he know if he could swallow it all in one go when he reached the 5th tribulation's realm. Even if he couldn't swallow it all, he would swallow until he couldn't bear it. This demonstrates the benefits of having a strong physical body. The former Shanjun was truly his good teacher. He also had his own persistence and efforts. Nothing was in vain. He summarized his strength and realm once again. At present, the only hurdle left was to achieve the perfection of the universe. Once he attained the complete state or perfection of the universe, he would be ready to break through the tribulation realm. But he couldn't sense where his tribulation was located. Initially, he thought it might be within the Wanlu Willow Divine Tree. However, judging from the current situation, perhaps the tribulation wasn't there. It might be within the infinite great world instead. The earlier he broke through, the more advantageous it would be for him. Yet, he wasn't overly concerned. Phew! He spent another day in the origin source world. Returning to his true self, He stood up and stretched lazily. Looking into the distance, all he saw were endless mountain peaks. Each one seemed like a towering expert. Buzz! A surge of energy rushed from behind. Jian Wushuang's face lit up, turning to look. The gates of the cave were wide open, and Wu Li stood outside, looking considerably younger. Moreover, his aura was 100 times stronger than before. He had actually broken through to the fourth tribulation realm. And not just any fourth tribulation realm. He had reached the peak immediately upon breaking through. I didn't expect you to progress so quickly. The Treant was the first to rise and looked towards Wu Li. Jian Wushuang opened his mouth, but his tone shifted, congratulating. Congratulations, Brother Wu Li. Seeing him here was evidently surprising to Wu Li, but he didn't ask much. Instead, he walked towards the Treant. Clap. With great enthusiasm, Wu Li immediately knelt down. Disciple has not disappointed the expectations of the teacher and has already broken through to the peak of the fourth tribulation realm. Teacher? There was an imperceptible gleam in Jian Wushuang's eyes. It seemed his guess was correct. This Treant had an unusual relationship with Wu Li. Moreover, his understanding of the Wanlu Willow surpassed that of ordinary people. Although his understanding of the Wanlu Willow was solely from Wu Li, for such a long time, he hadn't heard about the Wanlu Willow from anyone else. It could also be seen that very few people knew the secret of the Wanlu Willow. This treeman, being able to harbor the spirit of plants and trees, was definitely extraordinary. The spirit of plants and trees only acknowledged a celestial maiden as its master. This requirement meant that for others, it was impossible to surpass the divine wisdom. The Treants, capable of sheltering, significantly lowered the threshold. But even so, it was still extremely difficult. All right, since you've successfully broken through, there's no need for us to guard you here anymore. The Treant finished speaking and nodded at Jian Wushuang, saying, Young friend, we, the Wanlu Willow Divine Trees, bid you farewell. Jian Wushuang returned the gesture with a bow. Certainly, it seemed that the Treant had great confidence in the two of them, believing that they would surely enter the Wanlu Willows. Swish! Several figures disappeared and entered into Wu Li's body. Wu Li stood up, arms outstretched to welcome them. After they gathered together, he breathed a sigh of relief before turning to Jian Wushuang. Friend Wushuang, it seems the battle outside is fierce. Have the others all perished? Wu Li could now sense the fighting outside, so it wasn't surprising to him. And now, he was the only one who had arrived here. It was easy for him to imagine the fate of the others. Except for Li Shang, they should all have perished. Jian Wushuang sighed. Jinshin was also dead. He died behind Shizhou. Both perished. The two juniors from the Li family had long since perished. Only he remained in this place. As for Li Shang, he might have taken the opportunity to escape and might still be alive. After all, he had already converted to the monster clan. Good riddance. Wu Li couldn't help but smile. He couldn't forget his own past hardships. Being chased by Sangmo. Being chased by countless savage beasts. If it weren't for the teacher sacrificing the origin to save him, he would have fallen long ago. But his luck was extraordinary. He unexpectedly found this place. Coming here not only allowed him to evade the pursuit of Sangmo, but also led to his unexpected discovery of a treasure. Initially, just by sensing its aura, he thought it was a treasure containing the power of life. However, upon closer inspection, he discovered that it was actually the root of the Wanlu tree. Wu Li didn't keep it a secret and directly revealed it. The root of the Wanlu tree. Although it was only a small piece, it held infinite value. The Wanja tree not only contained life but also divine power and origin source. It was truly a natural treasure, akin to the innate divine beasts. Let's go inside and take a look. Wu Li led Jian Wushuang into the cave. Seeing is believing. Jian Wushuang examined it up close and even touched it with his hand, realizing the uniqueness of the root. However, the life force above had dissipated, and the root had become somewhat withered. To think that such a treasure exists in this world, it's truly unbelievable. Jian Wushuang's eyes were filled with astonishment. the Wanlu divine tree. It truly deserved to be called a divine tree. Wu Li pointed to the root and said, "When I broke through, I used most of it. What's left is for you, my friend." "So generous?" Jian Wushuang looked at Wu Li in astonishment, unable to believe it. "In fact, it's like this. I can't take this root with me. I've reached the peak, transcending the fifth tribulation. I'm not confident anymore, and the power within this root isn't enough. Leaving it here benefits others," Wu Li explained. Hearing Wu Li's explanation, Jian Wushuang nodded slowly. "In that case, I won't stand on ceremony." The life force and divine power within this root had disappeared, but it still contained the power of origin source. What he lacked now was the power of origin source. Once he devoured the power of origin source above, he would be able to quickly reach the perfect state of the universe. Although this time he was scavenging behind Wu Li, it was worth it. Even if it gave him divine power and life force, it wouldn't be of any use. As good as treasures were, they also had to match one's needs. The people of Shi Kingdom were fighting, nearly leading to their extinction. Whale Shark King plotted, finally resorting to his strongest card in desperation. TMU King intended to take advantage of the situation, but ended up being blocked outside, failing to seize the opportunity for himself. He too desired it, and nearly met his demise in the process. This led to the death of Kababon as well. Jinshin also perished along with Shurjiu, all for the sake of this tree root. This time he obtained everything he desired. The opportunity that Whale Shark King gained was all because of this tree root. The fact that the other party didn't take it away also made sense. Coming to this place, one was to find Wu Li, and now he had found him, with Wu Li unexpectedly giving him another great gift in return. For a moment it seemed like he had won again. Yet there were some gaps by his side now. "Brother Wushuang, absorb it quickly. I'll guard you from outside." The power used in the barrier is the divine power within this tree root. Now that the root can't replenish the outer barrier anymore, those people probably won't be able to hold out for much longer before breaking in. After explaining, Wu Li left the cave. Meanwhile, the outer barrier had begun to loosen. Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate, immediately taking action. He devoured all the origin source within the tree root into his body. A tremendous power of origin, still containing life, merged perfectly with his own origin source. The absorption speed was also quite fast. Within the origin source starry sky, a light spot completely blossomed. The origin universe, perfection. 10,000 black holes linked together into countless exquisite lines. At the same time, new universe secrets were born together. One in each direction: east, west, south, and north. At the center of the universe lay the cosmic sea. At this moment, the cosmic sea continued to rise, with a celestial island descending onto its surface. Another secret realm descended. From then on, the 10,000 black holes and the 5 major universe secrets thoroughly stabilized the universe. This was the completion of the universe. However, it was still in the stage of gestation. Only when it reached the tribulation realm could this perfect universe become real. Jian Wushuang gazed at his vast universe, feeling a mixture of emotions within him. Once a mere aspiration, now a tangible reality. Everything had come with immense difficulty. Swish! He stepped into his universe, ascending to the peak of the Tianqing secret realm. In an instant, a pavilion materialized in the breeze. In his universe, whatever he desired would manifest. Standing within the pavilion, he felt the power of all things surging through him. It was a marvelous sensation. To cultivate oneself was akin to the evolution of a universe. From now on, this is my world. Jian Wushuang's lips curved into a smile, a newfound sense of belonging washing over him in this moment. This was his future abode. In the blink of an eye, the heavenly chessboard appeared in the center of the pavilion, where he sat cross-legged, observing the origin source within the chess pieces. Beside him, an incense burner emanated an intoxicating fragrance, inducing unparalleled comfort. On a nearby table lay a 9-layered tower, the 9 Tribulations Tower. Above the pavilion's dome, His divine beast soldiers hovered. The Wuxia sword lay casually beside them. Almost all of his treasures were gathered here. With no artifacts on him, Jian Wushuang felt at ease, leisurely sipping his tea. Just as he relaxed, a figure flew out from the Nine Tribulations Tower. It was Weiss, wielding a scepter, unexpectedly emerging and marveling at the surrounding clouds. What a solid foundation for the universe! From this place, one could gaze upon the starry sky, where for sword moves were visible. You managed to come out? Jian Wushuang jumped in surprise, hastily standing up. Weiss chuckled, covering his mouth. I'm a god. Nothing can bind me. This remark earned Weiss an eye roll from Jian Wushuang. Gods and ghosts all day long. Truly laughable. Does the god still need disciples? It's really comfortable here. From now on, this is where I'll stay. Weiss waved his staff and erected a magnificent castle outside the wind-riding pavilion. Jian Wushuang was thoroughly shocked this time. This was his universe, yet someone could still freely create things in it. The sense of security instantly collapsed. Weiss stared at the castle, feeling somewhat dissatisfied, and then opened up some jungles and grasslands around it. Still lacking something? Weiss smoothed his wrinkled brow, thinking of something, and chuckled. It's missing life. With a gesture, various animals appeared. Perfect. Weiss raised his hands, very satisfied with the home he had built for himself. Jian Wushuang, however, was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. Looking at the wind-riding pavilion he had built and then at the castle Weiss had constructed, anyone unaware would think that Weiss was the master of the universe. Just as he was gnashing his teeth in frustration, he suddenly remembered something. Life Weiss had just mentioned. A word spoken, and life could be created in his universe. This was indeed something a god could do, although he had always felt the other party's claims of being a god were unreliable. But the other party could indeed accomplish it. In his universe, he should also be a god, and could also create life. He wielded the power of life. Perhaps not now, but once the universe completely solidified, he could probably create life. In addition to the special life form born of the universe, he could also create other ethnic groups. Creating ethnic groups was related to one's own divine body. The more powerful the divine body, the stronger the ethnic groups created. Some ethnic groups were born with 10,000 divine power. Or like the strongest race in the starry sky, the giant god race, born as the universe masters. Human race had to undergo 3 tribulations to be able to become universe masters. The giant god race had it from birth. Creator. Jian Wushuang's gaze concentrated. Looking at Weiss, perhaps there really were gods in the starry sky, and he was their creator, creating the existence of the starry sky. What Weiss just did, perhaps, was to make it clear to him that there are always greater beings beyond oneself. By a window of the castle, Weiss glanced at Jian Wushuang, a smile playing on his lips. Cultivation, if it's endless, then there must be someone creating the endless existence. With the Wuxia sword on his back, Jian Wushuang left the wind-riding pavilion. Neither the sky-sight heavenly chessboard nor the Nine Tribulations Tower were needed now. There was no need to constantly carry the beast god weapon either. They would come when needed with just a thought. As for the armor inside the chessboard, it was the same. This comfort zone had been shattered by Weiss. Now he had to face reality head-on. Inside the cave, the tree roots had completely disappeared, all absorbed by him, transformed into origin source energy. He didn't think he absorbed more than Wu Li. A piece of root from the Wanlu willow divine tree contained too much energy. What he absorbed was just 1,000th of it. Wu Li probably didn't absorb much either. Whoever took the roots got the lion's share. The identity of that person was not simple, but Wu Li never explained, and he didn't want to ask too much either. After leaving the cave, he saw the battered barrier. Old friend Wushuang, you're quite fast. Wu Li was somewhat surprised. He hadn't expected him to emerge so quickly. There was still a lot of power within the tree roots. Even if he were to absorb it, it would take several years. Yet Jian Wushuang had managed to sort everything out in just 2 days. It's just luck, and besides, this isn't a place for cultivation. Let's hurry and leave. Wu Li nodded. Agreed. Casually severing the barrier's power, without the divine power transmission, it became a consumable barrier. It seems that some means are still needed. Since Wushuang just came out, let me handle it. Wu Li's tone was full of confidence. He was also a master of the sword. With a single hand, he conjured a 3-foot wooden sword. Wanxiang. His figure flashed to the top of the barrier, and with a horizontal slash, he directly cut a gap in the barrier. Jian Wushuang's eyes twitched. Just now, that one sword strike already had 65,000 variations. He didn't believe that this was Wu Li's full strength. There's probably more hidden. Just this one sword strike is comparable to his peak state, when he had 5 times amplification of power from the beast god. If Wu Li doesn't use the super ancient transformation, he's already capable of beating him. And to use the super ancient transformation, he needs to gather energy in advance, with a time limit. In a real one-on-one fight, there's simply no opportunity to gather energy. Let's go. Wu Li turned his head and nodded to him, indicating that they could leave. Jian Wushuang didn't think too much about it and flashed along with him. In an instant, the two of them were outside the barrier. 2 days were enough for TMU King and the others to determine the winner. The side that probably won is now waiting for them. Perhaps they were injured and had to leave. But when he came out, he felt the imbalance of 3 divine powers. What? Jian Wushuang widened his eyes, seeing 3 people still alive inside the blessed land, and they were still fighting. He was familiar with these 3 people as well. TMU King, a special life form at the 6th Tribulation Realm. Whale Shark King, at the 5th Tribulation Realm with a divine power of 800,000, a strong individual with deep scheming and strength. San, a famous strongman at the 5th Tribulation Realm in the Sure Kingdom. The other 5th Tribulation Realm strongman of the Sure Kingdom, Jing Lian, is already missing. There's a high probability she's fallen. Wu Li, unlike the Trey Ant, can't secretly observe the outside through the barrier. He doesn't know these people at all. Jian Wushuang explained carefully, and Wu Li's expression changed drastically. Wu Li is indeed very powerful now, with a peak combat power of 700,000, he should have it. But hearing about the 6th Tribulation Realm still scared him. Don't worry, look at them all seriously injured now. No matter whom we help, we can all escape unscathed. Jian Wushuang said casually. Wu Li paused for a moment before conveying, Wushuang, could it be that you have a grudge against those savage beasts? If so, why not team up with that powerful individual from the Sure Kingdom and kill these 2 savage beasts? No, I have no grudge with that toad. But I do have significant enmity with San. Jian Wushuang didn't convey this telepathically, but rather said it aloud. At this moment, TMU King also spotted the 2 of them. Hu Biao, Jian Wushuang. Yet, these 2 names belonged to the same person. Both Whale Shark King and San were delighted to see Jian Wushuang. They also noticed a formidable, unfamiliar, strong individual. Jian Wushuang was surprised. Even after I've transformed into a human form, you can still recognize me. Seeing him appear, the 3 of them each stepped back. Currently, the situation was 2 against 1. Originally, it should have been Whale Shark and San against TMU King. However, it now turned into TMU King and San against Whale Shark. It seemed that a lot had happened here in the past 2 days. However, the divine power left among the 3 of them was all less than 700,000. Wu Li alone could take care of all these people. Jian Wushuang, you're still alive. That's great. San's face lit up with joy. Then he continued, let's join forces and kill those 2 beasts, avenging the others. TMU King wasn't surprised by San's betrayal. Over the past couple of days, San had made enemies with almost everyone. He had been living on the run. Even the Jian Lian Demoness had been killed by him. Whale Shark King's divine power surged, his voice cold. Things have come to this point, yet you all are still so foolish. Oh! Jian Wushuang descended slowly, speaking, Whale Shark King, it seems you're prepared to fall. Now he didn't need to cooperate with anyone to slay all 3 of them. After all, this place was a dead end, with no one around to witness. But that would be too dull. Whale Shark King's expression darkened. If it weren't for Jian Wushuang's sudden appearance, he would have had the ability to kill San and then deal with TMU King. But now, Jian Wushuang's appearance had disrupted his plans. Now he truly found himself at a dead end. Compared to him, TMU King and San were even more severely injured, with no way out. Since you've given up hope, I'll give you a chance. Jian Wushuang pointed his finger, indicating San. San was startled, then his face lit up again, saying, Jian Wushuang, I knew you would act for the greater good of the human race. Before he could finish, Jian Wushuang's divine power erupted violently, a stream of light directly injuring San, shattering his divine body. Now I'll give you a chance. Whoever kills San first is eligible to live. Jian Wushuang pointed to San lying on the ground. He could have killed San himself, but that wouldn't ease his resentment. Blame it all on this old bastard. Otherwise, so many people wouldn't have died. If he hadn't allowed Tian to kill him back then, he wouldn't spare him now. Wu Li stood aside, not intervening. He could see that this strong man from the Shi Kingdom must have offended Jian Wushuang, or else things wouldn't have turned out so badly. Whale Shark King and TMU King paused for a moment, then rushed to attack one after the other. Only one could survive. When Whale Shark King heard this, he didn't intend to attack San, but instead fixed his gaze on TMU King. And TMU King, still foolishly charged toward San. San knew it was over this time, ranting wildly at Jian Wushuang, his divine body bursting with a strong light as he chose to self-destruct. Even facing death, he didn't want to be killed by the Whale Shark King or the TMU King. It wasn't about pride in his human identity. He simply didn't want anyone to survive. TMU King was the closest, already heavily wounded, and this latest impact further depleted his divine power, leaving him with less than 600,000. Just as he braced against the surge, intending to turn and ask Jian Wushuang how to deal with it, he hadn't expected Whale Shark King to be behind him. The moment he noticed Whale Shark King, his chest caved in. You! TMU King roared, attempting to retaliate, only to find he couldn't muster any divine power. Whale Shark King pulled back his fist, leaping up and slashing down with a single-handed chop, directly cleaving off the TMU King's massive head. A dark green liquid sprayed out, marking the fall of TMU King, the king of the Roman River. And Whale Shark King also collapsed from exhaustion, having just burned through his remaining divine power. Now he was completely powerless. He lay on the ground, casting a sidelong glance at Jian Wushuang, devoid of any joy, instead expressing sorrow. I know you won't spare me, but I've already won. TMU King is dead. So I've won. You're wrong. I never intended to trouble you. But I made a promise, and the savage beasts outside won't abide otherwise. Jian Wushuang sneered. Whale Shark King's cunning ran deep. If the opponent were human, they would certainly be dealt with mercilessly. But being a savage beast and one from the infinite great world at that changed things. They might never leave this place alive. Unless they reached the 7th Tribulation Realm, joined the Ancient Wood faction, and became mounts for some top-tier experts or acted as enforcers. Only then could they venture outside. But reaching the 7th Tribulation Realm was no easy feat. There probably weren't even any 7th Tribulation Realm existences in the current infinite great world. Wait for me. Jian Wushuang didn't bother with the fallen Whale Shark King, but instead instructed Wu Li and the others to wait. He took out an incense burner from his mustard seed and lit 3 sticks in the center of then blessed land. It was a simple act of offering. However, he hadn't brought any paper money, as respectable people didn't carry such things around. Fortunately, he had some talismans as well as some pill recipes or formation diagrams. These things were of little use to him, but outside, they were worth millions of universe crystals. Not to mention the Emperor, even weaker tribulation experts would go to great lengths to snatch them. Comparatively, primordial stones could only be condensed by the Universe Master. Universe crystals were different. Almost everyone could condense them, and everyone needed them. Yet, all these treasures were being burned by Jian Wushuang as if they were just paper money. Wu Li stood aside, feeling a bit distressed. Perhaps his strength had increased too quickly, and he hadn't yet adapted to the aura of a peak fourth tribulation expert. For the fourth tribulation, primordial stones were needed. Otherwise, what would he use to face the fifth tribulation? Rest in peace, Jian Wushuang sighed, looking up at the entrance of the blessed land, and with a single hand, he gathered qi to directly widen the gap. Although this place had lost its life force, it was still considered a superior blessed land. With one strike, he broke through the barrier here and left with Wu Li. Only the exhausted whale shark king was left behind. But outside, there were many savage beasts. Seeing the commotion here, they began to approach. Whale shark king struggled to stand up, his throat hoarse as he muttered, "I cannot die." However, facing those courageous savage beasts who had already entered the blessed land at the third tribulation level, he was powerless to fight back. Amidst the siege of countless savage beasts, Whale Shark King's eyes dimmed. Even in death, he did not give up on self-destructing. Above the Roman River, Jian Wushuang and Wu Li broke through the surface of the water together, arriving in the sky. At this moment, the outside experts also noticed the two of them. The entire team from the Sure Kingdom had disappeared, shocking everyone. No one knew where the team from the Sure Kingdom had gone. In secret, the ancient Wood sect dispatched a universe master at the sixth tribulation realm to sneak into the infinite great world, entering the mountains beneath the Roman River to find that blessed land. However, it had already been overrun by countless savage beasts, making it too noisy to even attempt time reversal. The disappearance of the Sure Kingdom's team had become a legend. By this time, numerous other teams had followed the river or the mountains, reaching the inner regions of the infinite great world. Ironically, the inner regions were even safer than the outer ones. The inner regions were like a vast primitive continent. With few remnants of civilization, there were naturally no restrictions. The safer the place, the more savage beasts there were. Just like the relatively secure bottom of the Roman River, where a sixth tribulation realm powerhouse resided. Any team encountering them risked annihilation. Just like the Sure Kingdom, unlucky enough to be wiped out. Jian Wushuang and Wu Li were lagging far behind in their journey. Their strengths were formidable, and they encountered few dangers along the Roman River. As soon as they emerged, they received a transmission from the Empress. Surprisingly, they had not received the message while in the blessed land and only discovered it upon exiting. The Empress had already reached the inner perimeter. With a goal in mind, they continued on their way, intending to meet the Empress in the inner perimeter. In the brief transmission, Jian Wushuang edited out some of the details and sent the message to the Empress. Her response was a simple There was no further elaboration. Jian Wushuang and Wu Li cursed vehemently together. Her daughter was dead. Yet there was no emotional expression from her. How ruthless. Following such a person would lead nowhere. Fortunately, their plan involved the Wanlu. Their relationship with the Empress could be considered a form of cooperation. By helping each other attain the position of Holy Maiden, they would then have no further dealings. Let's focus on reaching the inner perimeter first. Jian Wushuang enveloped Wu Li in his origin source and swiftly traversed space using the three-quake universe technique. The speed was astonishing, leaving Wu Li speechless. Even a fifth tribulation realm expert couldn't catch up to them. Their journey continued without conversation or interference. In just 10 days, they arrived at the inner perimeter continent. The Dragon God Continent. Jian Wushuang chuckled as he read the introduction on the token, speculating, could this ancient land harbor tribulation realm true dragons? It's unlikely. Wu Li shook his head. True dragons at the cosmic level are as rare as beast gods. Once they appear, the ancient Wood sect will capture them. Their entire bodies are treasures, and the ancient Wood sect won't let them slip away. As they landed on the ground, they felt the gravity, which was extraordinary. It was a wild and ancient land. Even the gravity here was 100 times stronger than the outside world. Ordinary beings would find it incredibly difficult to survive. Without the ability to reproduce, ordinary tribes would be born as mere mortals, unable to endure such gravity. The population thriving in this place seemed extraordinary. Both of them dared not to fly recklessly high in the sky anymore. Instead, they flew close to the ground, moving extremely slowly. Just 2 days into their journey, they encountered a special life form of rock type at the level of fifth tribulations. Fortunately, it showed no hostility towards them, just gave them a glance, then dragged its huge body away. The savage world was full of wonders, things they hadn't seen outside. A single blooming flower could wipe out an entire tribe of savage beasts. After blooming, it grew rapidly, turning into an ordinary appearance, probably attracting the next tribe. This place was extremely comfortable, suitable for reproduction. Out of curiosity, Jian Wushuang and Wu Li picked some flowers. As a result, they attracted a flower demon at the level of fifth tribulations. As soon as they detected its aura, Jian Wushuang immediately pulled Wu Li and unleashed the three-quake universe, swiftly leaving that precious place. After escaping, cold sweat dripped down their backs. A fifth tribulation strong being was right beside them, yet they hadn't noticed. It was terrifying. How far are we from Her Majesty? Wu Li began to feel afraid. Although his divine power had increased to over 600,000, reaching the peak where he could burst out with 700,000 divine power, facing a fifth tribulations being was still challenging. Jian Wushuang took out a token and, following the simple map given by the Empress, estimated they were still a year away from the other side if they used the three-quake universe. Roughly, they could find the Empress's approximate location in about a month. However, constantly using the three-quake universe would attract the attention of many savage beasts. In the savage ancient land, there were countless savage beasts, even at the level of six tribulations. If they attracted the attention of a sixth tribulation savage beast, it would be disastrous. The origin source used by the three-quake universe was incredibly powerful. By then, they would be considered strong beings of the same level. Sixth tribulation savage beasts definitely wouldn't want a human sixth tribulation strong being to appear in their territory. They would certainly intervene. Once discovered, there would be no escape. In the Roman River, Jian Wushuang knew that the only sixth tribulation strong being had already fallen. That's why he dared to keep using the three-quake universe. But in the Dragon God continent, he wouldn't dare to play like this unless faced with danger. Fly slowly. It's just a year, and we'll be safe once we meet Her Majesty, Jian Wushuang reassured. But as soon as he finished speaking, he sensed a familiar aura. That aura, it seemed like Li Shang. He was pleasantly surprised, didn't expect Li Shang to still be alive. And he was very close to his location. If it wasn't too much trouble, he could bring the other person along. After informing Wu Li of this matter, Wu Li naturally did not object. One more person meant one more hope. In case the other person received a special mission, then they would hit the jackpot. Without hesitation, the two followed the causal aura directly. But as Jian Wushuang approached closer and closer, he felt an overwhelming aura that couldn't be crossed. He was scared and stopped directly. Wu Li, seeing this, paused as well. At first, he didn't understand, but the tree person inside him reminded him. Such a terrifying aura! Jian Wushuang nodded in agreement, saying, "That aura is definitely not something we can provoke. There are many strong beings around that aura, at least 3 of them at the 5th tribulation realm. The owner of the terrifying aura is at least at the 6th tribulation realm, even more terrifying than the aura of TMU King. And Li Shang was at the core of that aura. How could the two dare to approach? We are no match for them. But Li Shang's aura has been stable. He should be with the owner of the terrifying aura. Seems like he found a powerful backer. Now that Li Shang had transformed into a savage beast, naturally he was traveling with them. Perhaps they shouldn't have appeared. The two restrained their auras. For safety's sake, Jian Wushuang wrapped his aura around Wu Li's body. Then they both restrained their auras, cutting off thought power detection. Now that his universe was perfect, he could wrap up the auras of other people as well. But at most, only 2 people. Wu Li was quite surprised by this. Didn't expect Jian Wushuang to have such a trick, coupled with their speed. It was a double life-saving trump card. No wonder an emperor could become so powerful. Inwardly sighing, even the tree person had a high opinion of Jian Wushuang. Be careful. Once we've created some distance, We'll leave at full speed, Jian Wushuang reminded, afraid that the terrifying aura would notice them. Little did Jian Wushuang know, the owner of that terrifying aura had already sensed the two of them. It was just too lazy to deal with them. On a small island in the center of a distant lake, a one-sided massacre was unfolding. Among the executioners was Li Shang, once a formidable figure of the human race. Once the head of the Li family in the Yu Kingdom, he had now become a lackey of the savage beasts. However, the slaughter was directed towards these very beasts, which relieved Li Shang of any burden on his conscience. His actions were swift, precise, and steady. I'll say it again. Hand over that red sphere, or you'll all die. Li Shang's face twisted into a grimace as he grabbed one of the humanoid savage beasts he had defeated at his feet. The island in the middle of the lake, once inhabited by the Palunga clan, was now strewn with bodies, victims of the ruthless massacre. The Palunga clan was the foremost tribe in the Dragon God continent. They were numerous, spanning across the entire continent, and their strength was formidable. Within the clan, there were two main types of individuals, those inclined towards combat and those towards wisdom. The combatants were akin to special beings, even stronger than some, with talents and reserves that could dominate the continent. The wise ones, on the other hand, were extraordinary, each a master of esoteric arts such as puppetry, alchemy, divine forging, and formations. But now, the strong members of the Palunga clan in this area were being systematically slaughtered. Even the formidable warriors among them were no match for their assailants. In this tribe, there had once been a powerful Palunga expert at the Fifth Tribulation's realm, but they had been besieged and killed by 3 Fifth Tribulation's realm savage beasts. The remaining members of the tribe were significantly weaker. Li Shang alone had taken care of most of them. The ground was littered with the bodies of Palunga clan members, their uniformly green skin and antennae on their humanoid foreheads marking their distinctiveness. They were known as the descendants of the Dragon God according to legend, a rumor derived from the transformations of the Palunga clan's strong members. In the days of the Emperor, Palunga clan members could transform into dragons, but after reaching the Tribulation realm, they could no longer do so. According to the conjecture of the experts from the ancient Wood sect, it was because their bloodline power couldn't withstand it. Only Palunga clan members with pure bloodline power could transform into dragons at the Tribulation realm, becoming true dragon experts. Yet, throughout the Dragon God continent, only the ancient Dragon God had achieved this, and this Dragon God had already fallen. Many human experts outside believed that the Dragon God was killed by the ancient Wood sect. However, the strong of the Dragon God continent believed that the Dragon God had not been defeated by humans. That's because the Dragon God had the strength of a half-step 8th Tribulation realm, making him invincible in the entire infinite great world. The invaders from beyond the heavens had been repelled several times. Both sides had their own versions of events, and no one knew for sure what was true. Such matters were difficult to verify and had become relegated to legend. But now, there were strong individuals who insisted on probing into this matter further. Buzz! A humming sound echoed, and Li Shang quickly dropped the Palunga clan member, turning respectfully, "Lord Gula, please give me some time. I will make them talk." "Oh, it seems you have quite the patience." Gula was extremely thin, with spiral horns on either side of his head, purple lips, a swaying tail, sitting on a floating throne, appearing very indifferent. But his aura was terrifying, making everyone submit to him. Even his 3 subordinates at the 5th Tribulation realm stood obediently behind him like servants. If Jian Wushuang saw Gula's face, he would definitely be startled. Gula's appearance was exactly the same as Gu Sha Jian Wushuang defeated on the Grave God Mountain. This meant Gula was of the Frost Demon clan, a group that once dominated an era in the Moro spacetime, but now appeared here. And now, Gula hadn't transformed, yet his divine power was already 1 million. At the peak of the 6th Tribulation realm, the threshold of the 7th Tribulation realm, throughout the Dragon God continent, even across the infinite great world, he was probably the strongest existence. The Frost Demon clan could transform. If he transformed, his combat power would probably reach the level of the 7th Tribulation realm. Such terrifying strength, even with the entire human team, wouldn't be enough to offer a challenge. When Li Shang first emerged from the bottom of the Roman River, he ran towards the shore, feeling like a wild beast, able to stroll on land at will. But unexpectedly, he stumbled upon a restriction. Accidentally discovering a ruin, he cleaned out all the treasures inside, but found himself unable to leave. Just when he was in a dilemma, he stumbled upon a teleportation array, transporting him to this place. Coincidentally encountering Gula. Although his divine power had reached 600,000 through that ruin, it was nothing in front of Gula. He couldn't even move a muscle. Immediately, he chose to join forces with him. Gula had been searching for the Palunga clan's legacy treasure, the Dragon Ball, to verify the fall of the Dragon God. Now Gula had already obtained 2. In the Dragon God continent, the core tribes of the Palunga clan had 9. In other words, there were 9 Dragon Balls. As long as all 9 Dragon Balls were gathered, Gula could find out the secret of the Dragon God's fall. Of course, the secret was just a product of curiosity. The real reason behind all this was the Dragon God's legacy. The Dragon God had once plundered treasures from the entire infinite great world. Dragons loved treasures, especially the rare ones. They cherished collecting treasures above all else. Gura sought after these treasures. To him, the infinite great world posed no threat. Only the extraterrestrial visitors did. Those strong individuals from the human race were his true adversaries. With the Dragon God's treasures in his possession, he could rely on them to enhance his divine power once more, thus escaping the infinite great world. He wouldn't be bound by the human race anymore. He had glimpsed the prosperity of the outside world from the minds of those strong individuals of the human race. That was where the true strong thrived. Indeed, the ancient Wood continent had many formidable beings from other races. But these beings weren't considered savage beasts outside. They were just like the celestial wolves. Celestial wolves. Ultimately, they were savage beasts too. However, because of the words celestial wolf and the celestial wolf secret realm, they transformed into the native powerhouses of the ancient Wood continent. Just like the human race, they could also cultivate within the ancient Wood sect. However, most other savage beasts were still struggling within some primitive worlds. And most of these primitive worlds were suppressed by the ancient Wood sect. The infinite great world was one such place. It was just relatively close to the Wanlu divine tree. Of course, in terms of overall strength, it was much stronger than those ordinary primitive continents. The other savage beasts were clueless about these matters. Even Li Shang was unaware of why Gula was seeking these Dragon Balls. You damned invaders! I, a mighty member of the Palunga clan, will never let you go unpunished. A Palunga elder rushed towards Gula, prepared to self-destruct in a bid to take him down. Unfortunately, this elder's strength was lacking, with only 500,000 divine power. With a swift movement, Li Shang positioned himself directly in front of Gula, sealing the elder with hand gestures, rendering him unable to self-destruct. Forget it. Since you won't talk, I'll just kill you all and find out myself. Gula yawned, bored, lounging on the throne. With a casual wave, he dispatched his subordinates behind him, preparing to advance and exterminate all the members of the Palunga clan. Observing this, Li Shang wasted no time. He promptly subdued and killed the sealed Palunga elder before striding purposefully into the tribe's midst, beginning the slaughter of the remaining Palunga people. Passing by an elliptical stone hut, he noticed a Palunga child, small in stature with a smooth head. I almost forgot. You still have intelligent members in your tribe. Li Shang sneered coldly before entering the hut. Upon entering, his eyes lit up at the sight of a red spherical object hanging in the room. Excited, he disregarded the Palunga child and prepared to rush out to call for assistance. Just as he turned around, 2 figures intercepted Li Shang directly. You! Li Shang almost shouted when he saw the 2 figures. One of them, carrying a divine sword on his back, kicked Li Shang in the face, sending him crashing through the stone house, rendering him unconscious. Seeing this, Gula's subordinates hurried over. It should be this small sphere as stated in the mission, exclaimed one person. grabbing the floating sphere in the air with joy. Trying to collect the sphere into their storage space, they found it impossible to do so. Just as Li Shang was kicked away. Through the hole broken in the stone house, the figure of Jian Wushuang, carrying the divine sword on his back, was revealed. And the other person needed no introduction. It was Wu Li. Originally, they both were ready to leave, but they received a special mission. This mission was extremely special, not only a group task but also exceeding the rules of the 7 stars. Mission objective: collect 9 inheritance Dragon Balls of the Palunga clan. Seemingly simple, but after a little understanding of the Palunga clan, they were stunned. The Palunga clan had several 6th Tribulation Realm experts. It was impossible to snatch it. In their opinion, it was better to first find the Empress and then discuss a plan. But when they sensed Li Shang's burst of aura, they also sensed the aura of the Palunga clan. So they decided to come and take a look. As a result, they happened to encounter the slaughter by these people. Their courage grew as they hid their breath amidst the chaos and infiltrated the tribe. They wanted to take advantage of the confusion. Unexpectedly, they were discovered, thanks to Li Shang's guidance. Following the other party into the stone house, they originally intended to ask Li Shang about the situation here. But then they discovered the Dragon Balls. They didn't know which faction the people outside belonged to, but they were definitely not from the outside team. Yet, they were also searching for the Dragon Balls. They didn't care much and immediately attacked Li Shang. There were a total of 9 Dragon Balls. Now that they had one, their task was essentially completed. As long as they found the Empress and handed over this Dragon Ball, they would be free of any further obligations. With so many teams around, obtaining 1 Dragon Ball counted as success. Since it was a group task, they couldn't rely on one person to collect all 9. However, they needed to escape this place first. The terrifying powerhouse was still outside. If they were discovered, there would be no escape. Let me try. Jian Wushuang hurried over and tried to collect the Dragon Ball into his origin. But he couldn't do it. At this moment, he remembered outside the tribe, next to the terrifying aura, there was a guy covered in spikes, holding 2 identical balls. It seemed they couldn't be contained, so they had to be carried. Jian Wushuang grabbed the Dragon Ball with one hand, unable to care much, and could only carry it for now. Forget it. Let's go first. Wu Li just wanted to follow Jian Wushuang, but he was reminded again from within, making him pause and look at the Palunga child. Bring him along, he looks pitiful. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang almost cursed. At this point, he couldn't even protect himself, yet he had to care for a child from another race. But after a moment's thought, Wu Li wasn't the kind of person to show undue kindness, so there must be some reason for this. Immediately, he used divine power to envelop the Palunga child and then broke through the ground, creating a passage straight down. This passage led to a vast lake. Once underwater, Jian Wushuang's speed increased. He was also conveniently hiding the presence of 2 people, avoiding detection from outsiders. Originally, he intended to take Li Shang with him, but seeing how well Li Shang was blending in, perhaps leaving him with that terrifying powerhouse would be more suitable. The other person had 2 Dragon Balls in hand. They had to be careful. Consider them as planted spies. Inside the tribe on the small island, Li Shang was kicked away and dashed back as if possessed. To his dismay, he found no one there, not even the children from the Palunga clan. He glanced back at the hole in the ground. Cursing under his breath, he muttered, "Damn Jian Wushuang. You didn't even take me with you." He then reached for the token, intending to send a message to Jian Wushuang. But when he took out the token, he was astonished to find 2 messages. The first one, Special Group Mission 7 stars. Find the Dragon Clan. The second one was a transmission from Jian Wushuang. Stay where you are. Don't come. Now he understood. He understood why Jian Wushuang kicked him and didn't take him along. He was being sent as a spy. Thankfully, Jian Wushuang was smart enough to think of it, making him the esteemed leader of the Yu Kingdom's first family after the royal family, become a spy. And there was no benefit in it yet. But he still had to do it. Sensing something approaching from outside, he quickly sealed the entrance to the cave and collected all the tokens. Then he destroyed the entire stone house. Boom! The stone house below turned into ruins, and he was already in the air, cursing, "Damn Palunga people, daring to ambush me." This performance made many of Gula's subordinates who had gathered around retreat. "Brother Li Shang, don't be angry. Come help me." A plea came from afar. Li Shang's expression softened, and he chuckled, "Watch me!" Boom boom. Deep in the lake that surrounded the island, Jian Wushuang had already brought Wu Li and the Palunga child to the edge of the lake. Splash! Emerging from the water, he turned around to see billowing black smoke behind him. The Palunga clan settlement there had been completely destroyed. When the Palunga child saw this, tears welled up in his eyes. He was a wise member of the Palunga clan, knowing that saying anything now was useless. Jian Wushuang just glanced at him and said, "Let's go. Let's find a safe place first." With 2 people in tow, they flew close to the ground. After half a day's journey, he directly displayed the 3-quake universe, quickly teleporting hundreds of times, and finally stopped in a canyon. This place was teeming with beasts of the Tribulation realm. It was a medium-sized tribe, but the strongest among them was only at the level of 4th Tribulation. Taking advantage of the cover provided by this tribe, they reached the depths of the canyon. Buzz! Opening a cave with a flick of his hand, Jian Wushuang led them into it. "Let's rest for a while." Traveling wasn't tiring, but the cautious feeling wore Jian Wushuang out mentally and physically. Wu Li took the dragon ball from him and began examining it. The Palunga clan boy beside them didn't utter a word. Jian Wushuang casually sat on a rock, replenishing some mental strength. He also glanced at the dragon ball. "So, have you noticed any problems?" He hadn't carefully examined the dragon ball along the way. Only 3 hexagonal stars were engraved on the dragon ball. There was nothing else particularly special about it. After studying it for a while, Wu Li also gave up. "No, I can't see anything." As he spoke, he placed the dragon ball on the ground and plopped down on it. A child from the Palunga clan couldn't hold back anymore and rushed forward, delivering a swift kick to the dragon ball beneath Wu Li's buttocks. Plop! Wu Li, caught off guard, landed squarely on the ground. Seeing this scene, Jian Wushuang nearly burst into laughter. The child from the Palunga clan hurried to retrieve the rolling dragon ball. Jian Wushuang remained calm, watching as the child from the Palunga clan picked up the dragon ball. "This is our clan's sacred treasure. Although you saved me, you cannot desecrate our sacred object." The child from the Palunga clan carefully held the dragon ball, looking towards Jian Wushuang. He was exceptionally clever, aware that Jian Wushuang was the strongest individual there. He paid no attention to Wu Li. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly, taking the initiative to apologize. "I'm sorry on behalf of my friend. We sincerely apologize to you. I don't blame you, and I also want to thank you for saving me." At this moment, Wu Li stood up from the ground, dusted off his backside, and looked at the child from the Palunga clan, smiling. "Kid, what's your name?" "Dan Bao." Sensing the intelligence emanating from the child, Jian Wushuang felt that this youngster had great potential. He showed no fear in front of them, answering questions fluidly, without collapsing due to the deaths of his people. His eyes brimmed with wisdom. "Dan Bao, let me ask you, why did those people massacre your tribe?" Jian Wushuang inquired. Dan Bao lowered his head this time, tears welling up in his eyes at the thought of his entire tribe perishing. "They came to plunder our clan's sacred treasure, this dragon ball." After uttering these words, he looked up at Jian Wushuang and questioned, "Are you outsiders?" Upon hearing this, Wu Li was astonished and hurriedly asked, "How did you know we're not locals?" "Because our clan's ancestral memories contain information about your human race." Dan Bao's response furrowed Jian Wushuang's brows. It seemed to match the rumors. "Now that you know, we won't hide it from you. We saved you this time because of this dragon ball. We need to borrow it for a while." Jian Wushuang chose not to conceal the truth. This child was too clever to deceive. Upon hearing this, Dan Bao obediently handed over the dragon ball and said, "I know what you're going to do, but please don't harm the people of the Palunga clan. I promise you I won't. Jian Wushuang took the Dragon Ball, readily agreeing. He didn't need to compete for more Dragon Balls, as one was sufficient. The rest were irrelevant to him. Even if he acquired more, they would all be for the Empress. Yet the Empress had abandoned them. Now he and Wu Li could still think for her, which was already considerate enough. He must have owed her too much in his past life. Otherwise, he wouldn't have ended up being her son-in-law. This Dragon Ball was a bargaining chip, and there were only 9 in total. 1 was enough. Next, they needed to find the Empress. Initially, she had been indifferent. When he and Wu Li had just arrived at the Dragon God continent, the Empress had only given them a position and ignored them thereafter. Now, upon hearing about the acquisition of the Dragon Ball, she directly informed them to wait in place. In a day, the Empress would arrive at this location. This also surprised Jian Wushuang with her speed. He had exerted all his efforts for a month. The Empress only needed a day. 6th Tribulation Realm. Jian Wushuang figured out something. What task could possibly require 100 years? Wu Li had spent 100 years passing through one tribulation. Then the Empress might have also broken through. It was very likely she was in the 6th Tribulation Realm now. That explained her speed. Thinking of this, he breathed a sigh of relief. If the Empress had indeed broken through, then this time would be truly stable. The Universe Master of the 6th Tribulation Realm. Her divine power was probably close to 1 million now. This was not something to be trifled with. When Wu Li heard his speculation, his eyes brightened. At least we don't have to be afraid anymore. Just as the two relaxed, they sensed a strong aura coming from afar. Fear flashed in Jian Wushuang's eyes as he warned, "Not good. It's some terrifying powerhouse." Divine power instantly enveloped Wu Li and Danbao. He also held his breath. Wu Li cautiously speculated, "Could it be that idiot Li Sheng has betrayed us?" "It shouldn't be." Jian Wushuang restrained his telepathy, unable to sense that aura. But he felt it was unlikely. Li Sheng had no reason to betray him. Betraying him wouldn't benefit Li Sheng in any way. On the contrary, cooperating with him would bring significant advantages. That presence moved slowly, not like someone chasing them, but rather like someone on a journey. A powerful aura swept over them, causing Jian Wushuang to finally breathe a sigh of relief. That person, he's too terrifying. Could he be a 7 Tribulations realm expert? Wu Li panted heavily, his face incredulous. At this moment, Danbao took out a crystal ball and spoke up. "You're probably talking about him." Jian Wushuang and Wu Li both looked at the crystal ball. What the heck? Seeing that familiar face, Jian Wushuang thought he had traveled back to the Qixin Temple. The face was exactly like the ancient temple he had once destroyed. The ancient temple freezing demon clan. Back when he had just succeeded in the Dao merge, Zhenling had arranged for him to practice against them on the Grave God Mountain. He had learned a lot about the Frost Demon clan back then. These dominant clans from the ancient times of the Moro spacetime. He had thought they only existed in Moro spacetime, or perhaps there were some remnants in the Qixin Temple. He hadn't expected to encounter them on a desolate continent in the ancient moon spacetime. It must be. Jian Wushuang gritted his teeth, staring at that face. Wu Li exclaimed, "Do you know him?" "No, I know his clan." Jian Wushuang shook his head, then continued, "This is the Frost Demon clan. A peak clan with extremely powerful divine power. Most importantly, they don't reveal their peak state, but suppress their own strength to the weakest state." The earlier words didn't concern Wu Li. He wouldn't reveal his peak state to others either. But when he heard the last part, he froze, trembling as he said, "The weakest state, 1 million divine power? If that was their weakest state, wouldn't their peak state be godlike?" Jian Wushuang didn't know about the others, but the ancient temple had been able to increase from 100,000 to 180,000. That wasn't just a doubling. "Gula." Danbao said his name, then continued, "I've already passed on Gula's information to the Holy Land. Even if he's powerful, the Holy Land's super warriors will defeat him." Wu Li almost laughed out loud, feeling that this kid, despite being bright, was still naive. He didn't understand what a million divine power represented. That was the ticket for a 7 Tribulations realm expert. It was also a sign of a leap in combat power. Danbao saw the disdain in the eyes of the two, but he didn't bother to argue. He simply relayed the information from this place back to the Qishan Temple. The Holy Land of the Palunga clan had 3 5th Tribulation realm powerhouses mobilized and were heading towards this place. It would take just a quarter of an hour to arrive. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang and Wu Li were still foolishly boasting about the Frost Demon clan. It's not an exaggeration. If this Gula reaches its peak state, its divine power is estimated to be over 1 million. Jian Wushuang bragged. Can that increase by 300,000? Wu Li asked. If you haven't encountered it, you wouldn't know. Jian Wushuang continued boasting. Back in the day when I was battling in the outer domain, I encountered a Frost Demon clan. The outer domain? Battling? Wu Li, knowing Jian Wushuang was a reincarnated individual, raised an eyebrow, questioning, Wushuang, I thought you were quite young back then. How did you end up fighting in the outer domain? Initially, Wu Li was the one who provided information about the outer domain to Jian Wushuang. He couldn't fathom how Jian Wushuang could have battled in the outer domain while knowing nothing about them. That's where people went to fight in the most remote corners. Seeing the disbelief on Wu Li's face, Jian Wushuang grew agitated and exclaimed, Don't doubt me. Back then, I alone led tens of thousands of emperors. Although I was young, my strength. On this point, Wu Li had great trust. Jian Wushuang's experiences might be questionable, but his strength was undeniable, could be expressed in a single word. In that battle, I fought against that Frost Demon clan for a month before determining the outcome. It's still fresh in my memory. Jian Wushuang boasted, hands behind his back, elevating his own experiences, which was somewhat true, although there was a bit of exaggeration. But when he was truly an emperor, he did slay a 5th Tribulation realm Frost Demon clan powerhouse. Wu Li nodded and said, Wushuang, since you have experience, I'm not worried. When the emperor arrives, why don't we take care of that Frost Demon clan? They supposedly have 2 Dragon Balls. Oh, that... Jian Wushuang paused. He was merely talking big. They couldn't really go against Gula. The old temple back then, with its weaker strength, they could bully a bit. But now, Gula was at the 7th Tribulation realm. Without transforming, he could easily deal with the 2 of them. Adding the Empress didn't make much difference. Even if they transformed, all the teams combined wouldn't be enough to offer as sacrifices. Dealing with Gula wasn't worth it. I think it's better to forget it. 1 Dragon Ball is sufficient, and besides, His Majesty just had a breakthrough. He might not be accustomed to divine power yet. It's not the right time to act. As they chatted, Gula had already left. They didn't pay much attention to the outside world. It wasn't until they noticed 3 grim-faced members of the Palunga clan standing at the entrance that they both swallowed nervously. At this moment, Danbao ran over and spoke rapidly in the language of the Palunga clan to the 3. Jian Wushuang and Wu Li were frozen in place, afraid to move. 3 5th Tribulation experts. The weakest of them had a divine power of 700,000. And there were 3 of them. They had already given up on escaping. Wu Li, being a smooth operator, reacted relatively quickly. He casually took out several scrolls, carrying a tea tray as he approached to ingratiate himself. Danbao, my little friend, I'm not criticizing you, but when your big shot comes, shouldn't there be a heads up? Look how chilly it is here. There isn't even a place to sit. He blurted out before realizing he had just sat on the inheritance artifact of the host, feeling a bit awkward. For a moment, he didn't know what else to say, so he glanced at Jian Wushuang for support. Jian Wushuang nodded in agreement, saying, Indeed, it's quite chilly, ridiculously so. Among the 3 Palunga clan experts, the one in the middle, the most burly figure, strode up to Wu Li. Wu Li's slender frame made him look like a little chick. Have some tea. Wu Li smiled and offered the teacup. Smack! The burly Palunga expert kicked Wu Li in the face, sending him flying several yards. Wu Li's body crashed into the stone wall before falling down. This is the punishment for disrespecting our Palunga clan's sacred object. Jian Wushuang initially thought of using the Three-Quake universe with Wu Li, but seeing that the opponent had just acted without using divine power, and Wu Li was uninjured, he calmed down. The burly figure turned to Jian Wushuang, placing a hand over his chest and bowing. "I, Zack of the Palunga clan, thank you for saving Dan Bao." "You're welcome," Jian Wushuang replied politely, walking over slowly and handing over the Dragon Ball he had been holding. At this moment, he couldn't afford to lend it anymore. Lending it again would result in the same fate as Wu Li. Wu Li got up from the ground with a dark expression on his face. At this moment, Dan Bao rushed over and bowed to Jian Wushuang, thanking him. Then he explained, "Benefactor, it's not our strong men who are troubling you. Nowadays, 3 of our Palunga clan's core tribes have been destroyed. Since you are so familiar with Gula, please come with me to our sacred land and inform our clan's elders of what you know. We will lend you the Dragon Ball at that time." "Of course." Jian Wushuang nodded with a smile. Then he transmitted his voice to Wu Li. "Let's go." There was no other choice now. They could only go and see. The Empress would arrive here in less than a day. Judging from Dan Bao's attitude, there shouldn't be any danger. Moreover, they had heard that the strong men of the Palunga clan were not belligerent. But there was one thing Jian Wushuang was very worried about. He was afraid that the human teams would go to seize the Dragon Ball, creating a bad impression for the humans. "Please." Zack waved his hand, and a flying carpet appeared. Jian Wushuang and Wu Li jumped onto it together. Buzz! The divine power surged above the magic carpet. Swish! In an instant they arrived in the sky outside. Then they headed northward. "This direction?" Jian Wushuang pointed and reminded everyone, "As I said before, this direction is not good." Gula had just gone in this direction, and the speed wasn't fast either. At this speed, they would probably catch up to Gula in no time. That would be dangerous. Although Dan Bao had been with them all along, he was not a combatant from the Palunga clan, so he couldn't sense Gula's powerful aura. "Benefactor, rest assured, Zack is very strong. In the last clan competition, he ranked in the top 10. Even if he encounters Gula, he won't be afraid." Dan Bao had confidence in Zack. But Jian Wushuang didn't think so. The intelligent Palunga clan members were idiots when it came to combat power. They simply didn't understand. At this moment, Zack also looked over and said, "Benefactor, how powerful was the strongman who destroyed my Palunga clan?" "Starting at 1,000,000, Jian Wushuang said calmly. Hearing the mention of 1,000,000 divine power, Zack quickly shouted, Turn around quickly." The Palunga clan adept operating the flying carpet promptly halted. "Zack, that location is where Elder Jones' tribe is," Jian Wushuang realized. Oh no. Now Jian Wushuang understood. Gula must be heading to another tribe nearby. Zack, the strongest warrior of Elder Jones' tribe, had only been practicing in the Holy Land all this time. Now, upon hearing that Gula was heading towards their tribe, he became anxious. "You two take Dan Bao and the benefactor to detour to the Holy Land. I'll go back alone to support Elder Jones." Zack didn't falter this time, even with Gula possessing 1,000,000 divine powers. That's the spirit of the Palunga warriors, always holding the greatest kindness towards their tribe and people. They would never abandon a fellow tribesman. Just like when they went to rescue Dan Bao. Sending 3/5 Tribulation Realm warriors just for a child had nothing to do with inheriting sacred artifacts. Agreeing to lend Jian Wushuang the artifact was also genuine, because the sacred artifact wasn't really that useful, just used to pay homage to the great dragon god. "I'll go with you. Elder Jones is too old, and his divine power has declined significantly. You alone won't be much help." Another Palunga adept volunteered for battle. Jian Wushuang suggested at this moment, "Even if you both go, it won't be of any use. It's better to let the strong ones in the Holy Land support us now." He had heard from the elixir that Zack was only ranked 10th, yet he was already so powerful. So, if they gathered the remaining strong ones, there might really be hope to defeat Gula. The nearest Elder Westmo has already set out with his men from here. Danbao had long been in contact with elders from various tribes. Jian Wushuang also gave the elixir a praising glance for its quick thinking. Indeed, it was intelligent, much faster in reaction than these few blockheads. Let's go now. Zack and the other Palunga adept immediately increased their speed, flying swiftly towards Gula's direction, leaving behind only one Palunga adept, the weakest in strength. At this moment, Wuli transmitted, "Brother Wushuang, why don't we just take him down together?" "Stop!" Jian Wushuang gently shook his head. He now realized that the Palunga clan harbored no hostility towards the human race. It was better to go with the flow instead of always trying to outdo others. At this moment, Danbao utilized the crystal ball in his hand to continuously relay messages. Seeing the other party so busy, he had originally wanted to inquire about the Palunga Holy Land, but now he felt embarrassed to disturb them. After Zack and his group left, everyone rushed for a quarter of an hour to detour towards the Holy Land. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged, quietly waiting. But at this moment he sensed a powerful aura approaching. This aura was very familiar. Among them was the aura of Li Shang. It startled him, just as he was about to remind whoever controlled the flying carpet of the Palunga clan. Li Shang had already sent him a voice transmission. "Gula is not here. What's the situation on your end? Why are you mixing with the Palunga people?" Jian Wushuang breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing the message. As long as Gula was not here, it was fine. But he didn't know why Li Shang and his group had come here. Before he could remind any Palunga strongman, the other party had already sensed the aura themselves, but they stopped on their own accord. There was no intention to evade. "They are Gula's subordinates," Jian Wushuang remarked at this moment. At the same time, he directly communicated with Li Shang, asking about their intentions. This group was responsible for finding the location of the Palunga Holy Land. The Palunga tribe was easy to find. But the Holy Land was not something an ordinary person could easily come across. With Gula holding the upper hand, none of the Palunga tribes could stand in their way. They could be eliminated one by one. But the Holy Land was not that easy to locate, so they dispatched their subordinates to find it. They chanced upon Jian Wushuang and his companions. Leading them was a 5th Tribulation Realm expert, accompanied by 7 or 8 4th Tribulation Realm cultivators. Fortunately, the aura of that 5th Tribulation Realm expert wasn't as overwhelming as Jian Wushuang had anticipated. The Palunga clan cultivator probably halted begrudgingly for this reason, perhaps seeking vengeance for his people. Jian Wushuang also began to gear up, telling Wuli beside him, "You go assist this fellow Taoist later, leave the rest to me." "Me?" Wuli pointed at himself. Danbao understood now. As enemies approached, he pleaded for the two to act. "What, are you scared now?" Jian Wushuang feigned surprise. They had just been boasting a moment ago. If they backed down now, it would be quite embarrassing. Danbao was still here. Wuli also discerned the distribution of strength within that aura. Shrugged indifferently. "Why would I be? I just think this Palunga fellow can handle them alone. It's been a while since I've fought. Might as well use these people as practice." "Weren't you just beaten up earlier?" Jian Wushuang muttered quietly, his beast god weapon already manifesting around him. A mighty dragon roar echoed, different from the Palunga clan's true dragon. He was the candle dragon. Swish! Swish! Dozens of figures instantly appeared before Jian Wushuang and his group. The narrow path of enemies. Leading them was a handsome young man with long purple hair, his eyes sizing them up without restraint. When he spotted the Dragon Ball, his expression turned to shock. A Dragon Ball? You actually have a Dragon Ball?" The 5th Tribulation Realm expert from the Palunga clan sneered. "What? You want it?" Danbao whispered a reminder. "Jada. Their divine power is very formidable." Through the crystal ball, he could see that Gula's underlings possessed incredibly potent divine power. Much stronger than Jada. "No problem. Leave it to me." Wuli stepped forward at this moment, patting the round and smooth head of Danbao, and drew out a 3-foot sword directly. Jian Wushuang's divine power also surged to its peak. He immediately used 3 times the power of the beast god, with a divine power of 550,000. Dealing with those at the 4th tribulation realm, it was more than sufficient. As for anyone at the 5th tribulation realm, they would have to deal with Wu Li. "Let's do it!" Wu Li's expression turned serious as he bellowed. The others didn't waste any time with more words. Jiada especially didn't want to waste words with these killers who had slaughtered his people. The charge straight at them. Jian Wushuang, on the other hand, didn't move. He had to protect Danbao. Of course, there was also the Dragon Ball. In the crowd, he immediately spotted Li Shang, nodded at him, and signaled for him to come over and act with him. Li Shang cooperated well. Immediately, he shouted loudly, "General Sabo, I'll go snatch the Dragon Ball. The rest of you assist General Sabo." Sabo's purple hair fluttered as he calmly said, "You go stop the one with the sword on his back from escaping. I'll deal with these 2 small fries quickly." "Affirmative." Li Shang's face brightened as he immediately rushed towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang deliberately feigned weakness, not allowing more people to join their battle group. Sabo faced off against Jiada, 2 5th Tribulation Realm powerhouses, each with over 700,000 divine power. Wu Li suggested they all attack together. Jian Wushuang decided to turn around halfway and deal with those at the 4th Tribulation Realm. He let Jiada handle Sabo alone. Jian Wushuang didn't mind. Upon approaching, he found that Sabo's strength was just SOSO. Slightly stronger than Jiada, but not by much. It wouldn't be too late to help after Wu Li dealt with those at the 4th Tribulation Realm. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang chatted with Li Shang. Though he did not hold back, his actions were just to coordinate. From Li Shang, he also understood Gula's intentions. It coincided perfectly with the group task issued by the ancient Wood sect. Both tasks involved collecting Dragon Balls. At this rate, the human race team would sooner or later confront Gula. With this in mind, Jian Wushuang's heart sank. He hadn't thought about this before. Faust Demon Clan. 1 million divine powers. And he hadn't even transformed yet. Cooperation probably had little hope. However, human race powerhouses could join forces with the Palunga clan's powerhouses to deal with Gula. It was a good choice. The Holy Land must be visited. Jian Wushuang shared his thoughts with Li Shang. He made it clear to him the importance of this mission. If they succeeded, the candidacy of the Empress's Holy Maiden would be secured. The inner trials were crucial. The core area was basically a matter of charging in with strength. They must seize this opportunity now. Li Shang nodded in agreement, highly approving. At the same time, he admired Jian Wushuang's loyalty. Despite being abandoned by the Empress, he remained so faithful. Protecting Jinshin goes without saying. They were originally husband and wife, naturally they had to protect each other. Now that his wife was dead, Jian Wushuang remained so loyal. He could practically have a temple built for him. Jian Wushuang himself thought so too. He claimed it was for the Wanlu divine wood, but there was no need to risk it so much. That time he had staked his life. If they succeeded this time, it wouldn't be excessive for the Empress to come and kowtow to him. After the Empress became the Holy Maiden, she would have to worship him. But thinking about following Wu Li to sneak into the Wanyan, there would be quite a mess later. Consider it balancing things out. The two fought effortlessly. Wu Li was in high spirits, ready for the slaughter. With each swing of his sword, another head rolled, staining the sky crimson. Let these people witness the power of the first sword of the human race. Wu Li held his wooden sword firmly, taking a deep breath. A green breath escaped his lips, infusing the wooden sword with an intense energy, its blade glowing with newfound power. The remaining 3/4 tribulation experts exchanged glances, no longer daring to approach. They hadn't anticipated the overwhelming strength of the human 4th tribulation realm before them, comparable even to 5th tribulation realm experts. Bring it on! Wu Li smiled, shouting, "Come at me!" Cutting down these 4th tribulation realm savage beasts was like cutting through dry grass. Instantly they fell. Clang! Sheathing his wooden sword, he imitated Jian Wushuang, carrying it on his back, adopting the stance of a master. He turned to Jian Wushuang and asked calmly, "Do Do you need my help? Li Shang was astonished. He had not expected Wu Li, who had once been so submissive in the Yu Kingdom, to become this powerful. This return to the Yu Kingdom might very well see the Li family's position replaced by the Wu family. For a moment, he was not satisfied with his own divine power. He thought about gaining some benefits from this group task. While others had made breakthroughs, he needed to as well. Fifth Tribulation Realm. It wasn't impossible. Moreover, he had helped Jian Wushuang so much this time, he had to get some benefits first. He would rely on him in the future. For example, treasures like the primordial stones. He had been envious when Jian Wushuang casually took tens of thousands of primordial stones. Wushuang, your plan is perfect, but my current strength is too weak. I'm afraid. Before he could finish, Jian Wushuang understood his meaning. With a wave of his hand, he sent a palm containing a staggering 500,000 primordial stones into Li Shang's body. Oh, Wushuang, that's not what I meant. Li Shang wanted to be polite, but when he saw the amount, he trembled and said, Wushuang, you've given me a huge surprise today. 500,000 primordial stones. It was difficult for a Five Tribulations realm expert to produce so many. For Li Shang, even with the luck on his side during this holy meeting, it would be challenging to obtain treasures of equivalent value. Indeed, he had been given a tremendous advantage. He had already gathered some of the treasures needed for the Fifth Tribulation. What he lacked was primordial stones. This time, he might have a chance to break through and become a Fifth Tribulation expert. Once successful, he could firmly claim the title of the top family in Yu Kingdom. No matter how many future generations died, it wouldn't matter. There was plenty of time in the Fifth Tribulation realm. He had enough time to cultivate even stronger successors. And once the plan succeeded, Jian Wushuang would take the credit. Then, he would be second in merit. By then, his name would shake the ancient Wood continent. Those strong men in the secret realms might not remember his kindness. But the strong men of the 16 nations of Qingchao would definitely remember him. Li Shang. The opportunity for fame was right in front of him. 500,000 primordial stones. Jian Wushuang didn't care much about them. If given, then so be it. Compared to entering Wanlu, it was insignificant. It wasn't even worth a hair. He glanced at Wu Li and said, Don't worry about me. Go help Senior Jada. Although he said this on the surface, he secretly transmitted to Wu Li not to go too far. Later, Sabo would have to take Li Shang away. If Sabo was killed, Li Shang would be in trouble. If even a Fifth Tribulation expert fell, returning as a Fourth Tribulation expert wouldn't be good. One mustn't lose sight of the bigger picture, making Gula suspect Li Shang. Unfortunately, this time he overthought it. Wu Li had just gone to help Jada. Sabo exploded. His body directly expanded. His appearance changed from handsome to ugly, but his divine power increased by 70,000 to 80,000. Now Sabo had 800,000 divine power, just like the whale shark king back then. Another Fifth Tribulation expert at the limit. This time, Wu Li didn't need to pretend to be Jada. Both of them couldn't stop Sabo even if they exerted all their strength. Jian Wushuang also understood that it was time to escape. But he could only take 2 people at most. And Jada seemed to have no intention of leaving. Benefactor, take Danbao and go quickly. We'll hold them off. Jada's arms were broken, blood continuously flowing from his mouth. Extremely embarrassed, yet he still worried about Danbao's safety. Wu Li cursed inwardly and quickly transmitted to Jian Wushuang. Don't listen to him. Take me away quickly. I really can't hold him back. Don't worry. Jian Wushuang leisurely transmitted. Sabo, who had the upper hand, said, None of you can escape. Li Shang, my friend, delay them for me, and I can deal with these 2 in 3 breaths. No problem. Li Shang grinned wildly and began to erupt as well. However, privately, he told Jian Wushuang to attack him without restraint. It would be best to inflict a severe injury on him. Otherwise, his foundation stone would not feel secure. He had to be ruthless. Jian Wushuang secretly admired this transformation. Li Shang, who used to be so timid, had now become a true powerhouse. And he was ruthless enough not only towards others but also towards himself. His future was boundless. Don't speak too soon. First, try to withstand my super invincible whirlwind extreme annihilating strike. Jian Wushuang drew out the Wuxia sword directly. Clang. Cold light flickered. Power shook the heavens. Li Shang hesitated for a moment, feeling somewhat uncertain. But he still gritted his teeth and rushed forward, almost sticking his neck out to let Jian Wushuang strike. Buzz. A sword move was used, but he did not use the Starry Sky Chronicles. Although Li Shang had become stronger, his strength was still limited. With a peak of 600,000 divine power, even if he swung his sword move, it wouldn't necessarily kill Li Shang. He had to calculate carefully, aiming to wound him just right. With this strike, he aimed to cripple Li Shang without severing his hand. Crash! A huge sword shadow descended with tremendous force. But it was all on the surface. Even Sabo was stunned, not expecting a fourth tribulation realm to be so powerful. Li Shang's strength had already amazed him. That's why he respected Li Shang and treated him as a brother. But Jian Wushuang's strength was beyond his expectations. With just one strike, Li Shang lost half of his vitality. He fell directly from the sky. Wuli saw Sabo hesitate for a moment, taking the opportunity to rush towards Li Shang and shouted loudly, "I'll hold him off for you. Quickly go." Though he said so, he had already moved towards Jian Wushuang. Sabo also became anxious, punching through Gada's chest, completely disabling him. With a flicker, he intended to chase after Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's divine power enveloped the treasures and Wu Li, who was rushing towards him. And with a sudden flap of his wings, he ascended 9 layers of heaven. One thought universe. A complete universe descended. 3 quake universe. The wings behind fully spread out. The first quake surged out a universe's distance. 3 quakes done. The trio could no longer sense Sabo's presence. Sabo, standing still, gazed at the disappearing universe in the sky, his expression filled with astonishment. People fled, and the Dragon Balls vanished. All that remained was a powerless Jada and the heavily injured Li Shang. "Sabo, brother, it's my fault this time. I couldn't hold up." Li Shang dragged his heavily wounded body as he walked over. This time, even Gula couldn't find fault with his performance. Though Sabo felt infuriated, he was the strongest presence here. He couldn't even catch up to Jian Wushuang's speed just now. If Li Shang intercepted him, it would be strange if he could stop him. "Never mind, I was careless this time. Let's go back and report to the king." Sabo enveloped Li Shang in divine power and swiftly headed towards the Palunga clan's tribe where Gula was heading. It was also the tribe that Zack was supporting. However, the battle there wasn't intense because Gula had intervened. The strongest Zack was heavily injured with just one move. The 2/5 Tribulation Realm experts in the tribe were also dealt with by Gula's 2/5 Tribulation Realm subordinates. "King, the Dragon Balls have been found." With a thought, Gula summoned the Dragon Balls and casually threw them above the throne before sitting on it himself. "Kill the rest, and wait for Sabo to return." As soon as he finished speaking, he sensed 2 auras approaching. "Shoo!" Sabo dragged Li Shang in front of Gula and recounted what had just happened. "Oh, the Palunga person holding the Dragon Balls must be from the previous tribe. Where should they go next?" Gula stroked his chin, squinting. Seeing Zack lying on the ground, he said, "Palunga person, didn't you say someone in the Holy Land could defeat me? Why don't you stay with me and go to the Holy Land?" "No way." Zack was already in despair. 1,000,000 divine powers was too powerful. He was no match at all. Now, all he could do was wait for the Holy Land to gather all its strongmen to deal with Gula. Gula pointed his finger, piercing Zack's chest directly. What seemed like a casual blow actually destroyed Zack's origin source and divine body completely. "Let's return to the camp first." Gula pondered for a moment and decided to go back. Now, there were fewer and fewer people around him, and the efficiency was too low. But he had already sent a message to the extreme north icefield, and his subordinates there were bringing more strongmen. When the time came, they could strike those tribes together. Then mobilize everyone to find the Holy Land. After receiving the order, Sabo hesitated for a moment before asking, "Your Majesty, are you waiting for Kinyu and the others?" "Correct." Gula, seated on the throne, turned around, floating in the sky. The group, carrying the Dragon Balls, left the destroyed tribe. Sabo paused for a moment, then followed suit. Thinking about the strength of Kinyu and his group, he couldn't help but sigh deeply. Even the weakest among them could easily defeat him, and Kinyu himself possessed power comparable to the king's. If these people were to arrive at the Dragon God continent, this place would be desolate. The camp mentioned by Gula was actually an ancient relic. This place had a natural barrier. Of course, it was of no use to him. Li Shang had been transported here initially and encountered Gula. Returning to the resting place, he informed Gula about the loosening of his realm. Unexpectedly, Gula was pleased and gave him many treasures to enhance his divine power. This surprised Li Shang. At present, Gula was in need of people, and having one more fifth tribulation realm expert would add to his strength. After Li Shang settled down, he informed Jian Wushuang of the specific situation here. The Dragon God continent, in the depths of the North Marshes. Jian Wushuang, accompanied by Wu Li and Dan Bao, leisurely traveled. The three of them had been walking for an hour but had not yet reached the Holy Land mentioned by Dan Bao. Mainly because Dan Bao had never been to the Holy Land. They could only rely on the map passed to him by Zack to find it. While Jian Wushuang was guiding Dan Bao, he also pondered the situation on Gula's side. At the same time, he informed the Empress of his location. This day passed too slowly. Moreover, despite fleeing so far, the distance between the Empress and him remained unchanged. "Little brother, with the way you're leading, I thought you were going to sell us," Wu Li joked while tapping Dan Bao's round head. Although Dan Bao tried to remove Wu Li's hand several times, Wu Li persistently placed it back, as if avenging the kick earlier. Jian Wushuang was also a bit confused by the banter. Just then, a breath suddenly came from the distance. "It's Elder Blue's aura." Dan Bao also sensed it. Not only were they looking for the Holy Land, but the strong ones from the Holy Land were also looking for them. Jian Wushuang also sensed the other party's aura. Both sides teleported simultaneously, and met by chance. "Elder Blue." Dan Bao jumped off the flying carpet and ran straight over. Jian Wushuang also looked up to see the young and finely dressed member of the Palunga clan. Initially, upon hearing Elder, he had assumed it would be an old man. Never did he expect someone so young, with such a powerful aura. He must have been a strong cultivator at the Sixth Tribulation Realm. "Dan Bao." Elder Blue's voice was gentle as he placed his hand on Dan Bao's head. In an instant, he sensed everything Dan Bao had experienced that day. Dan Bao's eyes welled with tears as he looked up at Blue. At this moment, he finally relaxed completely. The tribe was wiped out in a single day. He watched helplessly as the people who had saved him perished. For a child like him, the blow was too much. Blue gently patted Dan Bao's head and said, "You've suffered." For a child who knew little of the world, the impact was indeed significant. After comforting Dan Bao, Blue looked towards Jian Wushuang and Wu Li. "Thank you both for protecting Dan Bao. Please follow me to the Holy Land. The Grand Elder is waiting for you." Blue waved his hand, and a powerful divine force enveloped Jian Wushuang and Wu Li, transporting them directly to another space. Jian Wushuang hadn't even had time to react. When they reappeared, they were at the foot of a massive mountain. "Please come inside." Blue gestured with his hand. Jian Wushuang nodded and, with Wu Li, followed him up the mountain. Once they ascended, they realized the gravity here was 10,000 times stronger. Mere mortals couldn't survive here. At least one had to be an immortal. The 10,000-fold gravity here was incomparable to the gravity in those mundane worlds from years ago. The gravity here was measured by the standards of spacetime. Spacetime's standard gravity was much stronger than that of material worlds. 10,000 times gravity was an ideal training ground for cultivation. The closer to the peak, the stronger the gravity. Dan Bao was already struggling beside them. Blue explained, "The gravity on Dragon God Mountain is calculated in steps. Each step increases the standard gravity of spacetime by 1-fold. 1 step, 1-fold. Jian Wushuang looked up at the road leading to the mountaintop. At least 100,000 steps led upwards. That meant a gravity increase of 100,000-fold. Even the emperor couldn't climb it. Perfectly matched their divine power. 100,000-fold gravity equaled 100,000-fold divine body. For the younger generation, it was a place of tempering. But for him and Wu Li, it was just like walking normally. There wasn't much of a difference. Dan Bao's divine power was only 50,000. He couldn't bear it halfway. It was Elder Blue who enveloped Dan Bao with his own divine power, carrying him to the mountaintop in a single step. Upon reaching the summit, Jian Wushuang noticed only one thing: elliptical stone house, standing alone without any other structures. It had to be said, the holy land of the Palunga clan was extremely rudimentary. Not much different from ordinary tribes. One would expect the Holy Land to be vastly different from a tribe, but it turned out to be worse. Benefactor, the Grand Chief requests your presence. As Jian Wushuang and the others reached the mountaintop, a young Palunga person emerged from the house, bowing respectfully to him. Jian Wushuang also nodded slightly in return, then led Wu Li inside. Blue and Dan Bao followed suit. Inside the room, the furnishings were even simpler. There was only one massive throne. Sitting above the throne was, of course, the Grand Elder of the Palunga clan. The Grand Elder's size was also immense. It was rumored that this Grand Elder was the sole descendant left behind by the Dragon God before its death. And the entire Palunga clan was created by this Grand Elder. He was an extraordinary figure. However, this creator of the Palunga clan was not skilled in combat. His strength was only at the ordinary tribulation level. He might not have even passed the 3rd tribulation. But his lifespan exceeded that of the 7th tribulation level of the human clan. Seeing such a living relic, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but bow respectfully, speaking with utmost deference. Grand Elder of the Palunga clan, Jian Wushuang of the human clan pays his respects. Human, thank you for saving Dan Bao and preserving our clan's sacred object. The Grand Elder's voice was hoarse, and speaking seemed to drain him of energy. He appeared very weak. Seeing that it was difficult for the other party to speak, Jian Wushuang skipped the pleasantries and directly stated the purpose of their visit. Certainly. He began by exaggerating Gula's strength, then delved into the secret of the human race coming to this place. This was entirely permissible. The ancient Wood sect had no rule against their members interacting with the powerful beings of the infinite great world. He had expected the revelation of the secret of the infinite great world to elicit surprise from the others. However, apart from Dan Bao among the Palunga people present, everyone remained remarkably nonchalant. It seemed they had known for a long time, and they seemed to know more about the human race than he did. From the heavens to the earth, from the green grass to the 16 nations, they were truly knowledgeable. But when it came to Gula, their knowledge was lacking. At least, after he described Gula's terror, no one refuted him. The elder on the throne reminisced. The ice demons you spoke of should come from the extreme north ice field, originally sealed by the dragon god. No wonder they came to seize the dragon balls. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang was also taken aback, not expecting this elder to be aware. He also understood Gula's origins. No wonder he hadn't found any information about Gula in the memories of those ancient beasts. It seemed the other party had just arrived in the Dragon God continent as well. Similar to him, they were outsiders. But with Gula's immense strength, why did the ancient Wood sect keep him here? Why not expel him? Gula's usual state was 1,000,000 divine power. After transforming, he possessed the standard combat power of the 7th tribulation realm. Staying in the infinite great world was indeed a waste. Unless the ancient Wood sect had other plans. He wouldn't know about that. Just from this holy assembly of the ancient Wood continent, the overall strength of the entire continent was actually quite average. If it were because of Babidi, he could even take advantage of this opportunity to capture the ancient Wood sect's lair. Just a barely surviving 8th tribulation and several 7th tribulation universe masters. The seventh tribulation realm universe master of the ancient Wood sect was not present, iron-hearted Marquis remained neutral, and the newly promoted Queen Yunji wouldn't involve herself in the matters of the ancient Wood sect. If he were Babidi Emperor, he would definitely bring people to the ancient Wood sect to forcefully penetrate the Wanlu Willow Divine Tree. Within the Wanlu lay abundant life force, could be said to be infinite. If Babidi obtained the Wanlu, he might be able to perfect the scattered tribulation method. By then, unifying the 9 major spacetimes would not be impossible. The number of scattered tribulation experts was 10 times more than that of the universe masters. Take the ancient Wood sect for example. There were 80 scattered tribulation experts in the 7th tribulation realm, if not 100. But there was only one universe master. The situation was even more exaggerated for the 6th tribulation realm. There were thousands of scattered tribulation experts, but only a few universe masters in the 6th tribulation realm. That was the foundation of an old-school power. Let the universe masters fight and then support a bunch of trash. Emerging powers were better off. They had quite a few universe masters. In this calculation, the human race was actually not as strong as those foreign experts on the Savage Land continent. Just like the strongest of the Palunga clan, Elder Blue, whose strength surpassed even that of the universe master at the level of 6 tribulations. After much deliberation, Jian Wushuang laid out the detailed plan. Cooperation. A win-win situation. Of course, he couldn't guarantee the return of the sacred object of the Palunga clan. But he was confident in protecting the people of the Palunga clan. Once the Empress arrived and he informed her of this matter, along with all the strong individuals of the human race, half of the success would be achieved. Otherwise, Gula alone could defeat them all. Of course, when he revealed this plan, he didn't have much confidence. Elder Blue standing by felt somewhat amused. A youngster with a constant divine power of 400,000, yet he spoke of protecting their plan. The Grand Elder on the throne, however, trusted Jian Wushuang greatly. Blue. Instruct all the elders of the tribes to bring back the Dragon Balls to the Holy Land. The Grand Elder ordered and took down a Dragon Ball from above the throne. Currently, there were 2 Dragon Balls in the Holy Land. One brought by Jian Wushuang and the other guarded by the Grand Elder. In addition to the 3 Gula acquired. Currently, there were 4 still outside. They must be gathered in the Holy Land. It was too dangerous outside. This was a part of Jian Wushuang's plan. First, gather all the existing Dragon Balls together. Then make the strong individuals of the human race wary. Combined with the strength of the Palunga clan itself. The strong individuals of the human race could not refuse cooperation. Actually, he didn't have much confidence at first because he was just an emperor. Even with the help of the Empress's influence, he couldn't gather all the strong individuals of the human race together. Some means must be employed. He wouldn't be polite to those so-called allies. In just a short time of interaction, he would rather trust the strong individuals of the Palunga clan than those of the human race. Grand Elder, rest assured, when Her Majesty arrives, she will surely rally all the human race to come together and cooperate with the noble strong individuals to defeat Gula. Jian Wushuang was genuinely happy. After all, planners didn't need to participate in battle. They operated from behind the scenes. Elder Blue, upon hearing the Grand Elder's suggestion, didn't hesitate for a moment and directly took out the communication crystal. Jian Wushuang admired this. Knowing that the other party was the strongest of the Palunga clan, just by observing their demeanor, he was certain that they weren't easy to deal with. Originally, he thought the other party wouldn't agree, and it would be a waste of breath. But unexpectedly, they followed the Grand Elder's words obediently. Jian Wushuang admired this. Strength doesn't always equate to wisdom. A tribe needs strong individuals to thrive, but lasting prosperity requires wise leaders. With the situation halfway successful, he relaxed a bit and gave a meaningful look to Wu Li beside him, his excitement unconcealed in his eyes. Wu Li was naturally happy too. Avoiding a fight was always preferable. Right now, he just wanted the Empress to lead them to victory without a fight. The two hadn't been happy for long when trouble arose on Elder Blue's side. Grand Elder, please have a look at this. Blue's expression was somewhat embarrassed as he handed the crystal ball to the Grand Elder. Jian Wushuang and Wu Li also looked over, but as non-members of the Palunga clan, they couldn't see the image on the crystal ball. The Grand Elder didn't look at the crystal ball, but instead placed his hand on it and then opened his eyes. The benefactors of the human race, is this the woman you refer to as your empress? The Grand Elder of the Palunga clan shook the crystal ball, and a figure appeared above it. Wu Li nodded repeatedly upon seeing that elegant face. Yes, this is indeed our empress. Her strength is no weaker than Elder Blue's. Just wait until she dashed before Wu Li could finish his sentence. Jian Wushuang stopped him with a hand. As Wu Li was about to ask why he was stopped, he noticed the red sphere hanging from the Empress's waist with one hand and his face froze. Grand Elder, to be honest, I'm not very familiar with her either. Jian Wushuang forced a smile and continued, You know how it is. Suddenly, Blue's divine power erupted, and he flashed behind the two, grabbing them each like little chicks and presenting them in front of the Grand Elder. You must not be disrespectful. The Grand Elder shook his head, but there was a hint of sadness in his eyes because their tribe had just been completely destroyed. It was the Empress as Jian Wushuang had referred to her. This also meant the plan was shattered. If the Palunga tribe was wiped out, cooperation would be impossible. However, Jian Wushuang and Wu Li were innocent, and they had even saved Danbao. Elder Blue, I suspect they can communicate with the outside world. They cannot stay in the Holy Land. Blue reminded, having long sensed that Jian Wushuang and Wu Li were not good people. He had been holding back from saying so. Now the humans had begun slaughtering the Palunga tribe. If it weren't for him warning the tribe and being kept in the dark, the Dragon Balls would have been brought to the Holy Land, and whichever empress came in would pose a threat to their tribe. After a long silence, the elder's voice rasped, Two benefactors, here are some treasures. You can take them and leave. Consider it a token of gratitude from our Palunga tribe. This was a tactful way of saying, take these treasures and scram. We're even now, but next time we meet, we're enemies. Wu Li was tempted by the treasures he saw, but Jian Wushuang was unwilling to accept it. Such a perfect plan, all ruined. Fengchen, you've misled me. He was so angry he didn't even bother with honorifics. If only he had told the other party about the plan beforehand. Now it had turned out like this. Everything was over. The treasures the elder brought out meant nothing to him. He didn't even look at them. He didn't want them either. He had reached the limit of emperor. It wasn't the lack of treasures, but the lack of opportunity. The opportunity to break through the tribulation. Right now, there was no time for cultivation, only waiting for the opportunity. Gathering the 9 Dragon Balls was one such opportunity. He was doing it not only for Empress Fengchen but also for himself. And now it was all falling into place. Everyone would perish together. He could already foresee the future, not because of his mastery of time, but because it was an ending anyone could see. Gula and the human clan besieged the Palunga clan. They were fighting for the Dragon Balls. After killing the Palunga clan members, it would be a showdown between the two sides. Among the human clan, the strongest was Empress Fengchen, the only universe master at the 6th Tribulation Realm. Empress Fengchen's divine power alone amounted to 1 million. She had just broken through to the peak of the 6th Tribulation Realm. But even that wasn't enough. Gula's strength soared after his transformation. Empress Fengchen couldn't hold him back, let alone the rest of the weaklings. In the end, Gula would emerge victorious. The entire human clan would be defeated. They wouldn't be able to complete their mission, let alone think about the position of the Holy Maiden. The position of the Holy Maiden. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. The previous Holy Maiden seemed to have been just a universe master at the 6th Tribulation Realm. Was this position of the Holy Maiden really that important? Not necessarily. The current group mission seemed more important than the position of the Holy Maiden in every way. This might be the most challenging mission in all the sacred gathering. 7 stars. Appearing for the first time. This was the first and perhaps the last mission involving the 7 stars. It led them to a situation they could have handled better. But now things had turned out like this. Elder Blue, forget about the reward. We're not willing to leave. This time, I'm willing to stand with the Palunga clan. Jian Wushuang directly presented the token and threw it to Blue. He wasn't going anywhere. Leaving with the Empress would only end with Gula killing him sooner or later. He might as well stay in the Holy Land to cultivate. Doing nothing, he just wanted to see how chaotic the Dragon God continent would become. However, Wu Li seemed hesitant. His understanding of the Frost Demon clan was only from Jian Wushuang's words, so he didn't think it was that extreme. The tree spirit within him reminded him again at this moment, causing him to abandon the idea of leaving. He also took out the token. TSK, the benefactor underestimates my Palunga people too much. Please take back the token. You can stay in the Holy Land for as long as you want. If any strong member of the Frost Demon clan breaks through the Holy Land, I hope you can take Danbao and leave the Dragon God continent, preferably taking him to the 9 heavens and 10 lands. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly, not saying much, but his intention was clear. As long as he could stand, he wouldn't let Danbao lie down. When it came to protecting people, he still had his ways. Blue was also surprised this time. He hadn't expected the elder to let Jian Wushuang and Wu Li stay, but he didn't dare to disobey. After thanking the elder, Blue let Danbao lead the two of them down the peak. On the way down the mountain, Wu Li directly asked, Wushuang, do you have any plans? None. Jian Wushuang didn't hide anything either. He truly had no plans anymore. He had given up hope. The elder of the Palunga clan could say such things just now, probably foreseeing something. Perhaps the Palunga clan would perish, and the human clan would also meet its downfall. At that time, they would have to flee again. Wu Li, however, felt somewhat unwilling and unconcerned about the Danbao beside him. He spoke frankly, why don't we go join that Gula? Li Shang seems to be doing pretty well with him. If you refine some more conversion pills, we can join Gula together. His plan wasn't too bad. At least it made Jian Wushuang chuckle. Joining Gula meant they would be useless after gathering the Dragon Balls. They would be killed when they were no longer needed. Even the astute Danbao chuckled. Seeing this, Wu Li patted Danbao's head and said, what are you betraying us to? Don't embarrass yourself. What Gula needs is people to find the Dragon Balls. If the Dragon Balls are all found, why would he need subordinates? His rhetorical question directly countered Wu Li. Danbao led the two of them to a small courtyard halfway up the mountain and said, benefactors, this is where you'll stay. Whatever you need, just let me know. I'll be living here during this time too. This place is really nice. Jian Wushuang pushed open the courtyard and was very satisfied with the arrangement. The environment was impeccable, and the cultivation conditions were top-notch. Near the cliff, not only was there a pavilion where the wind passed through, but also a hot spring. Wu Li casually strolled into the pavilion, looked around, and nodded, saying, indeed, it's quite suitable for retirement. This sentence was a reminder to Jian Wushuang. Their goal was still Wanlu. Although they were currently passive, they couldn't just hide here without any plans. Clearly, they wanted Jian Wushuang to come up with a plan. Danbao, you can just call me Jian Wushuang from now on. No need to call me benefactor. You don't owe us anything. Benefactor. Those two words were too grating. Saving Danbao in the first place was Wu Li's idea. The reason for rescuing him was to inquire about the locations of other Dragon Balls from him. The thoughts were dirty enough, and now they wanted someone to call them benefactors all the time. Wu Li wasn't ashamed, but he felt that he should be. All right, benefactor Jian Wushuang. Danbao nodded. Jian Wushuang sighed and casually said, do you have any alcohol in your Palunga clan? Yes, Elder Blue is good at refining it. I'll go get some. After saying this, Danbao ran out of the courtyard. Watching the disappearing figure, Wu Li silently marveled at the other's agility. Knowing he wanted to have a private conversation with Wu Li, he directly left. Splash! Jian Wushuang reached behind and pulled out 2 jugs of fine wine, handing one to Wu Li. You have wine, yet you sent Danbao to fetch more for you? Wu Li took the jug, sniffing it with surprise. Jian Wushuang rolled his eyes, saying helplessly, you wanted to hear my plan, didn't you? I can't just discuss it in front of the kid. True. Wu perked up instantly. Having a plan at least gave him some peace of mind. Jian Wushuang casually stripped off his clothes and stepped into the hot spring. The moment he entered, he felt the activation of divine power. Comfortable. He leaned back against the edge, hands resting behind his head, taking another sip of the exquisite wine. This was truly the most comfortable he had felt in a long time. All day it was just fighting and killing. Never thought about taking a moment to relax. At this point, Wu also removed his clothes and joined him in the spring. Ah! He closed his eyes in bliss, reclining opposite Jian Wushuang. So comfortable. For a while, they forgot all about discussing the plan. The two of them relaxed in the hot spring, enjoying each other's company, gradually drifting off to sleep. Dan Bao intentionally delayed a bit before entering. But upon seeing Jian Wushuang and Wu sleeping peacefully in the hot spring, he decided not to disturb them further. After placing down the wine, he quietly left the courtyard. During this nap, Jian Wushuang slept soundly, without a worry in the world. He lay there for who knew how long, but by the time he opened his eyes, dusk had settled in. Gazing at the myriad stars in the sky and seeing Wu still sound asleep, he didn't see the need to wake him. Turning his head to glance at the direction of the house, where candlelight flickered, presumably Dan Bao's doing. He rose gently, retrieving a loose robe and sat alone in the pavilion, sipping wine. His identity token kept chiming. Messages from the Empress and Li Shang kept pouring in. He felt no urgency whatsoever. First, he glanced at the message from Li Shang. Danger, danger, danger. Qinyu, just a name. But according to Li Shang, Qinyu was Gula's strongest subordinate, a special life form at the 6th Tribulation Realm. They came from the extreme north ice field. In addition to Qinyu, there were several 6th Tribulation Realm experts and hundreds of 5th Tribulation Realm ones. That was nearly enough to make a party for the human race. Indeed, it was very dangerous. Even if his previous plan had succeeded, he might not have been a match. Gula had too much of an advantage. Now the entire Dragon God continent was in chaos. Countless powerful beings were engaged in battles. The news from the Empress was simple. It was about the Dragon Ball. Later, news about the cooperation of the human race also came, prompting them to quickly head to a gathering place of the human race after seeing the message. The most important thing was to bring the Dragon Ball. It seems they've already encountered Gula.